Jay, where is he?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you can use it.
We could just turn to it on this one, Jay, and you could have it.
Yep.
Amidst them still, the famous bard sang on, and they sat in silence listening as he performed the Achaeans' journey home from Troy. All the blows Athena doomed them to endure. And now, from high above in her room and deep in thought, she caught his inspired strains, Icarius' daughter Penelope, wary and reserved. And down the steep stair from her chamber she descended. Not alone, two of her women followed close behind. That radiant woman, once she reached her suitors, drying her glistening veil across her cheeks, paused now where a column propped the sturdy roof, with one of her loyal handmaids stationed either side. Suddenly, dissolving in tears and bursting through the bard's inspired voice, she cried out, "Phemius, so many other songs you know to hold us spellbound, works of the gods and men that singers celebrate. Sing one of those as you sit beside them here and drink their wine in silence." But break off this song, the unendurable song that always rends the heart inside me, the unforgettable grief. It wounds me most of all. How I long for my husband, alive in memory, always, that great man whose fame resounds through Hela's right to the depths of Argus. "Why, mother," poised Telemachus put in sharply, "why deny our devoted bard the chance to entertain us any way the spirit stirs him on? Bards are not to blame. Zeus is to blame. He deals to each and every laborer on this earth whatever doom he pleases. Why fault the bard if he sings the Argives' harsh fate? It's always the latest song, the one that echoes last in the listeners' ears, that people praise the most. Courage, mother, harden your heart and listen. Odysseus was scarcely the only one, you know, whose journey home was blotted out in Troy. So many others died there too. So, mother, go back to your quarters, tend to your own tasks, the distaff in the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for giving orders, men will see that, but I most of all. I hold the reins of power in this house." Astonished, she withdrew to her own room. She took to heart the clear good sense in what her son had said. Climbing up to the lofty chamber with other women, she fell to weeping for Odysseus, her beloved husband, till watchful Athena sealed her eyes with welcome sleep. But the suitors broke into uproar through the shadowed halls, all of them lifting prayers to lie beside her, share her bed, until discreet Telemachus took command. "You suitors who plague my mother, you insolent, overweening, for this evening let us dine and take our pleasure. No more shouting now. What a fine thing it is to listen to such a bard as we have here. The man sings like a god. But at first light we all march forth to assembly. Take our seats, so I can give my orders and say to you straight out, you must leave my palace. See to your feasting elsewhere. Devour your own possessions, house to house by turns. But if I decide the fare is better, richer here, destroying one man's goods and going scot-free, all right then, carve away. But I'll cry out the everlasting gods in hopes that Zeus will pay you back with vengeance. All of you destroyed in my house while I go scot-free myself." So Telemachus declared, and they all bit their lips, amazed the prince could speak with such daring. Euphites' son Antinous broke their silence. "Well, Telemachus, only gods could teach you to sound so high and mighty. Such brave talk. I pray that Zeus will never make you king of Ithaca, though your father's crown is no doubt yours by birth." But cool head Telemachus countered firmly, "Antinous, even though my words may offend you, I'd be happy to take the crown if Zeus presents it. You think that nothing worse can befall a man? It's really not so bad to be a king. All at once your palace grows in wealth, your honors grow as well. But there are a host of other Achaean princes. Look, young and old, crowds of them in our island here, and any one of the lot might hold the throne now that Odysseus is dead. But I'll lord of my own house and servants all that King Odysseus won for me by force." And now Eurymachus, Polybius' son, stepped in. "Surely this must lie in the god's lap, Telemachus, for which Achaean will lord over it sea-girt Ithaca. Do hold on to your own possessions, rule your house. God forbid that anyone tear your holdings from your hands while men still live in Ithaca. But about your guest, dear boy, I have some questions. Where does he come from? Where's his country, his birth, his father's old estates? Did he bring some news of your father, his return? Or did he come on business of his own? How he leapt to his feet and off he went. No waiting around for proper introductions, and no mean man, not by the looks of him, I'd say. Eurymachus, Telemachus answered shrewdly, clearly my father's journey home is lost forever. I no longer trust in rumors from the blue, nor bother with any prophecy when mother calls some wizard into the house to ask him questions. As for the stranger, though, the man's an old family friend from Taphos, wise Anchialus' son. He says his name is Mentes, lord of the Taphian men who love their oars. So he said, but deep in his mind he knew the immortal goddess. Now the suitors turned to dance and sing to the lovely beat and sway, waiting for dusk to come upon them there. And the dark night came upon them, lost in pleasure, finally to bed, each to his own house. Telemachus off to his bedroom, built in the fine courtyard, a commanding, lofty room set well apart, retired too, his spirit swarming with misgivings. His devoted nurse attending him, bearing a glowing torch. Eurylochia, the daughter of Ops, Pisanor's son, Laertes had paid a price for the woman years ago, still in the bloom of youth. He traded 20 oxen, honored her on a par with his own loyal wife at home, but fearing the queen's anger, never shared her bed. She was his grandson's escort now and bore a torch, for she was of all the maids who loved the prince the most. She nursed him as a baby. He spread the doors of his snug, well-made room, sat down on the bed and pulled his soft shirt off, tossed it into the old woman's conscientious hands, and after folding it neatly, patted it smooth. She hung it on a peg beside his corded bed, then padded from the bedroom. Drawing the door shut with a silver hook, sliding the door bolt home with a rawhide strap. There, all night long, wrapped in a sheep's warm fleece, he weighed in his mind the course Athena charted. Who wants to try book 2?
Telemachus set sail. When young dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, the true son of Odysseus sprang from bed and dressed. Over his shoulder he slung his well-honed sword, fastened rawhide sandals under his smooth feet, and stepped from his bedroom, handsome as a god. At once he ordered heralds to cry out loud and clear, and summon the flowing-haired Achaeans to full assembly. Their cries rang out. The people filled in quickly. When they grouped, crowding the meeting grounds, Telemachus strode in too, a bronze spear in his grip. And not alone, 2 sleek hounds went trotting at his heels. And Athena lavished a marvelous splendor on the prince, so the people all gazed in wonder as he came forward, the elders making way as he took his father's seat. The first to speak was an old lord, Aegyptius, stooped with age, who knew the world by heart. For one dear son had sailed with King Odysseus, bound in the hollow ships to the stallion land of Troy, the spearman Antiphus. But the brutal Cyclops killed him, and trapped in his vaulted cave, the last man the monster ate. 3 other sons he had, one who mixed with the suitors, Eurymanus, and 2 kept working with their father's farms. Still, he never forgot the soldier, desolate in his grief. In tears for the son he lost, he rose, and among them, "Hear me, men of Ithaca, hear what I have to say. Not once have we held assembly, met in session, since King Odysseus sailed away in the hollow ships. Who has summoned us now? One of the young men? One of the old-timers? What crisis spurs him on? Some news he's heard of an army on the march, word he's caught firsthand so he can warn us now? Or some other public matter he'll disclose and argue? He's a brave man, I'd say. God be with him too. May Zeus speed him on to a happy end, whatever his heart desires." Winning words with a lucky ring, Odysseus' son rejoiced. The boy could sit no longer, fired up to speak. He took his stand among the gathered men. The herald, Pisner, skilled in customs ways, put the staff in his hand, and then the prince, addressing old Aegyptius first, led off with, "Sir, that man is not far off. You'll soon see for yourself. I was the one who called us all together. Something wounds me deeply. Not news I've heard of an army on the march, word I've caught firsthand so I can warn you now, or some other public matter I'll disclose and argue. No, the crisis is my own. Trouble has struck my house, a double blow. First, I have lost my noble father, who ruled among you years ago, each of you here, and kindly as a father to his children. But now this, a worse disaster that soon will grind my house down, ruin it all, and all my worldly goods in the bargain. Suitors plague my mother against her will, sons of the very men who are your finest here. They'd sooner die than approach her father's house, so Carius himself might see to his daughter's bridal, hand her to whom he likes, whoever meets his fancy. Not they infest our palace day and night. They butcher our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling our glowing wine as if there's no tomorrow, all of it squandered. Now we have no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. We ourselves, we're hardly the ones to fight them off. All we do is parade our wretched weakness, a boy inept at battle. Oh, I'd swing to attack if I had the power in me. By God, it's intolerable. What they do, disgrace my house of shambles. You should be ashamed of yourselves, mortified in the face of neighbors living roundabout. Fear the gods' wrath before they wheel in outrage and make these crimes recoil on your heads. I beg you by Olympian Zeus, by Themis too, who sets assemblies free and calls us into session. Stop, my friends. Let me alone to pine away in anguish, unless, of course, you think my noble father Odysseus did the Achaean army damage, deliberate harm, and to pay me back, you do me harm, deliberately setting these parasites against me. Better for me if you were devouring all my treasure, all my cattle. If you were the ones, we'd make amends in no time. We'd approach you for reparations round the town, demanding our goods till you'd return the lot. But now look, you load my heart with grief. There's nothing I can do. Filled with anger, down on the ground, he dashed the speaker's scepter, bursting into tears. Pity seized the assembly. All just sat there, silent. No one had the heart to reply with harshness. Only Antinous, who found it in himself to say, "So high and mighty, Telemachus, such unbridled rage. Will now fling your accusations at us? Think to pin the blame on us? You think again. It's not the suitors here who deserve the blame. It's your own dear mother, the matchless queen of cunning. Look here. For 3 years now, getting on to 4, she's played it fast and loose with all our hearts, building each man's hope, dangling promises, dropping hints to each, but all the while with something else in mind. This was her latest masterpiece of guile. She set up a great loom in the royal halls, and she began to weave, and the weaving fine spun, the yarn's endless, and she would lead us on. Young men, my suitors, now that King Odysseus is no more, go slowly, keen as you are to marry me, until I can finish off this web. So my weaving won't all fray and come to nothing. This is a shroud for our Lord Laertes, for that day when the deadly fate that lays us out last will take him down. I dread the shame my countrywomen would heap upon me. Yes, if a man of such wealth should lie in state without a shroud for cover. Her very words, and despite our pride and passion, we believed her. So by day she'd weave at her great and growing web. By night, by the light of torches set beside her, she would unravel all she'd done. 3 whole years she deceived us blind, seduced us with the scheme. Then, when the wheeling seasons brought the 4th year on, one of her women, in on the queen's secret, told the truth, and we caught her in the act, unweaving her gorgeous web. So she finished it off, against her will. We forced her. Now, Telemachus, here is how the suitors answer you. You burn it in your mind, you and all our people. Send your mother back. Direct her to marry whomever her father picks, whoever pleases her, so long as she persists in tormenting us, quick to exploit the gifts Athena gave her, a skilled hand for elegant work, a fine mind, and subtle wiles too. We've never heard the like, not even in old stories sung of all Achaea's well-coiffed queens who graced the years gone by. Mycenae, crowned with garlands, Tyro, and Alcmena, not one who could equal Penelope for intrigue, but in this case, she intrigued beyond all limits. So we will devour your worldly goods and wealth as long as she holds on to that course. The gods have charted deep inside her heart. Great renown she wins for herself, no doubt. Great loss for you and treasure. We'll not go back to our old estates or leave other parts, not till she weds the Argive man she fancies. But with calm good sense Telemachus replied, Antinous, how can I drive my mother from our house against her will? The one who bore me, rid me too. My father is worlds away, dead or alive, who knows? Imagine the high price I have to pay, Icarius, if all on my own I send my mother home. Oh, what I would suffer from her father. And some dark god would hurt me even more when mother, leaving her own house behind, calls down her withering furies on my head, and our people's cry of shame would hound my heels. I will never issue that ultimatum to my mother. And if you have any shame in your own hearts, you must leave my palace. See to your feasting elsewhere, devour your own possessions, house to house by turns. But if you decide the fare is better, richer here, destroying one man's goods and going scot-free, all right then, carve away. But I'll cry out to the everlasting gods and hope that Zeus will pay you back with a vengeance. All of you destroyed in my house, while I go scot-free myself. And to seal his prayer, far-seeing Zeus sent down a sign. He launched 2 eagles soaring high from a mountain ridge, and down they glided, borne on the wind's draft a moment. Wing to wingtip, pinions straining taut, till just above the assembly's throbbing hum they whirled. Suddenly, wings thrashing, wild onslaught of wings, and banking down at the crowd's heads, a glaring fatal sign. Talons slashing each other, tearing cheeks and throats. They swooped down on the right through homes and city. All were dumbstruck, watching the eagles trail from sight. People brooding deeply what might come to pass. Until the old warrior Halitherses, master's son, broke the silence for them. The one who outperformed all men of his time at reading bird signs, sounding out the omens, rose and spoke, distraught for each man there. Hear me, men of Ithaca, hear what I have to say. Though my revelations strike the suitors first of all, a great disaster is rolling like a breaker toward their heads. Clear Odysseus won't be far from loved ones any longer. Now, right now, he's somewhere near, I tell you, breeding bloody death for all these suitors here. Pains aplenty, too, for the rest of us who live in Ithaca's sunlit air. Long before that, we must put heads together, find some way to stop these men, or let them stop themselves. Better for them that way, by far. I myself am no stranger to prophecy. I can see it now. Odysseus, all is working out for him, I say. Just as I said it would the day the Argives sailed for Troy and the mastermind of battle boarded with them. I said then, after many blows and all his shipmates lost, after 20 years had wheeled by, he would come home, unrecognized by all. And now look, it all comes to pass. Stop, old man. Eurymachus, Polybus' son, rose up to take him on. Go home and babble your omens to your children. Save them from some catastrophe coming soon. I'm a better hand than you at reading portents. Flock of birds go fluttering under the sun's rays. Not all are fraught with meaning. Odysseus, he's dead now, far from home. Would to God that you die with him too. We'd have escaped your droning prophecies then, and the way you've loosed the dogs of this boy's anger. Your eyes peeled for a house gift he might give you. Here's my prophecy, bound to come to pass. If you old codger, wise as the ages, talk him round, incite the boy to riot, he'll be the first to suffer, let me tell you. And you, old man, we'll clap some fine on you. You'll weep to pay, a fine to crush your spirit. Telemachus, here in front of you all, here's my advice for him. Let him urge his mother back to her father's house. Her kin will arrange the wedding, provide the gifts, the array that goes with the daughter dearly loved. Not till then, I'd say, with the island princes quit their taxing courtship. Who's there to fear, I ask you? Surely not Telemachus, with all his tiresome threats. Nor do we balk, old man, at the prophecies you mouth. They'll come to grief. They'll make us hate you more. The prince's wealth will be devoured as always, mercilessly. No reparations, ever. Not while the queen drags our hopes to wed her, waiting, day after day, all of us striving hard to win one matchless beauty, never courting others, bevies of bridges who'd suit each noble here. Telemachus answered, firm in his resolve, Eurymachus, the rest of you fine, brazen suitors, all I have done with appeals to you about these matters, I'd say no more. The gods know how things stand, and so do all the Achaeans. All now I ask is a good swift ship and a crew of 20 men to speed me through my passage out and back. I'm sailing off to Sparta, sandy Pylos too, for news of my long-lost father's journey home. Someone may tell me something, or I may catch a rumor straight from Zeus. Rumor that carry news to men like nothing else. Now, if I hear my father's alive and heading home, hard pressed as I am, I'll brave out one more year. If I hear he's dead, no longer among the living, then back I'll come to the native land I love. Raise his grave mound, build his honors high, with my full funeral rites that he deserves, and give my mother to another husband. A declaration, and the prince sat down as Mentor took the floor. Odysseus' friend in arms, to whom the king, sailing off to Troy, committed his household, ordering one and all to obey the old man, and he would keep things steadfast and secure. With deep concern for the realm, he rose and warned, Hear me, men of Ithaca. Hear what I have to say. Never let any sceptered king be kind and gentle now, not with all his heart, or set his mind on justice. No, let him be cruel and always practice outrage. Think, not one of the people whom he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godlike man, and kindly as a father to his children. I don't grudge these arrogant suitors for a moment, weaving their violent work with all their wicked hearts. They lay their lives on the line when they consume Odysseus's worldly goods, blind in their violence, telling themselves that he'll come no more. But all the rest of you, how you rouse my fury, sitting here in silence, never a word put forth to curb these suitors, paltry few as they are, and you so many. Mentor, Eunor's son, Leocritus, rounded on him, shouting, Rabble-rousing fool, now what's this talk? Goading them on to try and hold us back? It's uphill work, I warn you, fighting a force like ours for just a meal. Even if Odysseus of Ithaca did arrive in person to find us well-bred suitors feasting in his halls, and the man were hell-bent on routing us from the palace, little joy would his wife derive from his return, for all her yearning. Here on the spot he'd meet a humiliating end if he fought against such odds. You're talking nonsense, idiocy. No more. Come, dissolve this assembly. Each man return to his holdings. Mentor and Helithesis can speed our young prince on, his father's doddering friends since time began. He'll sit tight a good long while, I trust, scrabbling for news right here in Ithaca. He'll never make that trip. This broke up the assembly, keen to leave. The people scattered quickly, each to his own house, while the suitors strolled back to King Odysseus' palace. Telemachus, walking the beach now, far from others, washed his hands in the foam surf and prayed to Pallas. Dear God, hear me. Yesterday you came to my house and told me to ship out on the misty sea and learn if father, gone so long, is ever coming home. Look how my countrymen, the suitors most of all, the pernicious bullies, foil each move I make. Athena came to his prayer from close at hand for all the world with Mentor's build and voice. And she urged him on with winging words, Telemachus, you'll lack neither courage nor sense from this day on, not if your father's spirit courses through your veins. Now there was a man, I'd say, in words and action both. So how can your journey end in shipwreck or defeat? Only if you were not his stock, Penelope's too, then I'd fear your hopes might come to grief. Few sons are the equals of their fathers. Most fall short, all too few surpass them. But you, brave and adept from this day on, Odysseus' cunning has hardly given out in you. There's every hope that you will reach your goal. Put them out of your mind, these suitors' schemes and plots. They're madmen, nor a shred of sense or decency in the crowd. Nor can they glimpse the death and black doom hovering just as their heads to crush them all in one short day. But you, the journey that stirs you now is not far off, not with the likes of me, your father's friend and yours, to rig you a swift ship and be your shipmate too. Now go home, now home you go and mix with the suitors there. But get your rations ready, pack them all in vessels, the wine in jars and barley meal, the marrow of men's bones, and durable skins, while I make rounds in town and quickly enlist your crew of volunteers. Lots of ships in secret Ithaca, old and new. I'll look them over, choose the best in sight. We'll fit her out and launch her into sea at once.
Are you at the end of the book?
No.
Are you in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And so Athena, daughter of Zeus, assured him, no lingering now. He heard the goddess's voice. But back he went to his house with aching heart, and there at the place found the brazen suitors, skinning goats in the courtyard, singing pigs for roasting, and Tinius, smiling warmly, sauntered up to the prince, grasped his hand, and coaxed him, savoring his name. Telemachus, my high and mighty, fierce young friend, no more nursing these violent words and actions now. Come, eat and drink with us, just like the old days. Whatever you want, our people will provide, a ship and a picked crew to speed you to holy Pylos, out for the news about your noble father. But self-possessed Telemachus drew the line. Antinous, now how could I dine with you in peace and take my pleasure, you ruffians carousing here? Isn't it quite enough that you, my mother's suitors, have ravaged it all, my very best these many years, while I was still a boy? But now that I'm full grown and can hear the truth from others, absorb it too. Now, yes, that the anger seethes inside me. I'll stop at nothing to hurl destruction at your heads. Whether I go to Pylos or sit tight here at home, but the trip I speak of will not end in failure. Go I will, as a passenger, nothing more, since I don't seem to command my own crew. That, I'm sure, is the way that suits you best. With this, he nonchalantly drew his hand from Antonius's hand, while the suitors, busy feasting in the halls, mocked and taunted him, flinging insults now. God help us, one young buck kept shouting. He wants to slaughter us all. He's off to sandy Pylos to hire cutthroats. Even Sparta, perhaps, so hot to have our heads. Why, he'd rove as far as Ephyra's dark, rich soil, and run back home with lethal poison, slip it into the bowl, and wipe us out with drink. Who knows? Another young blade up. and ventured. Off in that hollow ship of his, he just might drown. Far from his friends, a drifter like his father. What a bore! He'd double our work for us, splitting up his goods, parceling out his house to his mother and the man who weds the queen. So they scoffed. But Telemachus headed down to his father's storeroom, broad and vaulted, piled high with gold and bronze, chests piled with clothing, vats of redolent oil, and there, standing in close ranks against the wall, were jars of seasoned mellow wine, holding the drink unmixed inside them, fit for a god, waiting the day Odysseus, worn by hardship, might come home again. Doors, snugly fitted, doubly hung, were bolted shut, and a housekeeper was in charge by night and day. Her care, her vigilance, guarding all those treasures. Euryclea, the daughter of Ops, Pisenor's son, Telemachus called her into the storeroom. Come, nurse, draw me off some wine in smaller traveling jars, mellow, the finest vintage you've been keeping, next to what you reserve for our unlucky king, in case Odysseus might drop in from the blue and cheat the deadly spirits, make it home. Fill me an even dozen, seal them tightly. Pour me barley in well-stitched leather bags. 20 measures of meal, your stone ground best. But no one else must know. These rations now, put them all together. I'll pick them up myself. Toward evening, just about the time that my mother climbs to her room and thinks of turning in. I'm sailing off to Sparta, sandy Pylos too, for news of my father's journey home. Perhaps I'll catch some rumor. A wail of grief, and his fond old nurse burst out in protests. Why, dear child? What craziness got into your head? Why bent on rambling over the face of the earth? A darling only son, your father's worlds away. God's own Odysseus, dead in some strange land. And these brutes here, just wait. The moment you're gone, they'll all be scheming against you. Kill you by guile, they will. And carve your birthright up in pieces. No, sit tight here. Guard your own things here. Don't go rowing over the barren salt sea. No need to suffer so. Courage, old woman, thoughtful Telemachus tried to reassure her. There's a God who made this plan. But swear you won't say anything to my mother. Not till 10 or a dozen days have passed, or she misses me herself and learns I'm gone. She mustn't mar her lovely face with tears. The old one swore a solemn oath to the gods, and vowing she would never breathe a word, quickly drew off wine in 2-eared jars and poured barley in well-stitched leather bags. Telemachus returned to the hall and joined the suitors. Then bright-eyed Pallas thought of one more step. Disguised as the prince, the goddess roamed through the town, pausing beside each likely crewman, giving orders. Gather beside our ship at nightfall. Be there. She asked Neoman, Veronius' generous son, to lend her a swift ship. He gladly volunteered. The sun sank, and the roads of the world grew dark. Now the goddess hauled the swift ship down to the water, stowed in her all the tackle well-rigged vessels carry, moored her well away at the harbor's very mouth, and once the crew had gathered, rallying around, she heartened every man. Then, bright-eyed Pallas, through one last thing, back she went to King Odysseus' halls, and there she showered sweet oblivion over the suitors, dazing them as they drank, knocking cups from their hands. No more loitering now, their eyes weighed down with sleep. They rose and groped through town to find their beds, but calling the prince outside his timbered halls, taking the build and voice of Mentor once again, flashing-eyed Athena urged him on. Telemachus, your comrades at arms are ready at the oars. waiting for your command to launch. So come on with our voyage now. We're wasting time. And Pallas Athena sped away in the lead. As he followed in her footsteps, man and goddess. Once they reached the ship at the water's edge, they found their long-haired shipmates on the beach. The prince, inspired, gave his first commands. Come, friends, get the rations aboard. They're piled in the palace now. My mother knows nothing of this. No servants either. Only one has heard our plan. He led them back, and the men fell in and fetched down all the stores and stowed them briskly, deep in the well-ribbed holds, as Odysseus' son directed. Telemachus climbed aboard. Athena led the way, assuming the pilot's seat, reserved astern, and he sat close beside her. Cables cast off, the crew swung to the oarlocks. Bright-eyed Athena sent them a stiff falling wind, rippling out of the west, ruffling over the wine-dark sea, as Telemachus shouted out commands to all his shipmates. All lay hands to tackle. They sprang to orders. Hoisting the pinewood mast, they stepped it firm in its block amidships, lashed it fast with stays, and with braided rawhide halyards hauled the white sail high. Suddenly, wind hit full, and the canvas bellied out, and a dark blue wave, foaming up at the bow, sang out loud and strong as the ship made way, skimming the whitecaps, cutting through her goal, all running gear secure in the swift black craft. They set up bowls and brimmed them high with wine, and poured libations out to the everlasting gods, who never die, to Athena first of all, the daughter of Zeus with flashing sea-gray eyes. And the ship went plunging all night long and through the dawn. Book 3.
Kevin, let's hear from you.
Do I start your translation?
Sure. Is that the input to,
Yes.
Thanks.
whichever one you want, this one or the translation? And Charles, I mean.
You said Stein? You can leave it, it's okay.
Helios rose to bronze heaven, leaving the beautiful stream of Okeanos to illumine the fertile grain-bestowing places for mortal persons and immortal gods alike. The ship arrived at Pylos and the well-built citadel of Nestor. On the seashore, the populace was performing a sacrifice of bulls that were black all over, dedicated to dark-haired Poseidon, shaker of the underworld. There were 9 groups of men there, 500 in each, and for each they readied and held 9 bulls. The people were eating the entrails and burning the thigh parts for the gods. The sailors put in at the dock and took down the sail of the comely ship and moored her. Then they themselves disembarked. Telemachus left the ship also, and Athena led him. The goddess, gray-eyed Athena, was the first to speak. No need, Telemachus, for you to feel daunted any longer, or that you're of no account, for you have sailed the sea to learn of your father, where the earth covered him over, what fare befell him. But now you must go straight to Nestor, tamer of horses. We shall gather what counsels he keeps within his heart. Inquire of him yourself, that he might tell you the truth. He will not respond with falsehood. He is particularly strong-minded, that is, sagacious. Then strong-minded Telemachus responded, Mentor, but how shall I go? How must I approach him? For I am by no means experienced in artful speaking. It is a daunting thing for a young man to interrogate an elder. Telemachus, you yourself will compose some things in your heart. In some things a god will prompt you. For I do not think that you were born and reared without the good will of the gods. So spoke Pallas Athena, and quickly led him onward. and he followed in the footsteps of the goddess. They went to the assembly place in Pylos, where the people had gathered for the rite. There Nestor sat with his sons, and about them were others, preparing the feast, roasting meat and putting pieces on spits. And when they saw the strangers, they all came thronging around, and took their hands, and bade them be seated. First the son of Nestor, Pisistratus, drew near and took the hands of both of them, and sat them at the feast on soft fleeces, and on the sand by the water next to his brother Thrasymedes, and by his father. He gave them portions of the entrails, and poured out wine in golden goblets, and offering her a toast, he spoke to Pallas Athena, maiden daughter of Zeus, who holds the aegis. Pray now, O guest stranger, to Lord Poseidon, for the feast that you have chanced upon is in coming here is his. And when you have poured out libations and made your prayers as is fitting, then give the cup of honey-sweet wine to this fellow, since I think that he too should make his prayer to the immortals. For all people have need of the gods, but he is the younger, of about the same age of myself, so I'll give the golden goblet first to you. So speaking, he put the golden wine cup in her hand. Athena was happy at the young man's good judgment, and he gave the golden goblet first to her, and at once she prayed profusely to Lord Poseidon. Hear me, earth-holder Poseidon. Do not deny us fulfillment of the things for which we are praying. First, bring glory to Nestor and his sons, then grant gracious requital to all the other people of Pylos for this resplendent hecatomb, and still do grant to Telemachus and myself that we may return to Ithaca once we accomplished that for which we have come in our swift black ship. So she prayed, though she herself was fulfilling all of these things. She handed the handsome double-handed goblet to Telemachus, and the dear son of Odysseus prayed in a similar vein. And when they'd roasted the meat and pulled it off the spits, they split up the portions and feasted the feast, which was splendid. And when they'd done with desire for eating and drinking, Nestor, the Gerenian horseman, was first to speak. Now it is better to ask questions and inquire of our guest strangers who they are. So, O strangers, who are you? From where have you sailed over the watery boulevards? Do you come on some practical matter, or do you wander at random like pirates over the ocean, putting your lives at risk, bringing evil to others? Strong-minded Telemachus took courage and responded, for Athena herself put courage in his breast, so that he might inquire concerning his father, who had been gone so long, and so that his own people good repute might pass among people. O Nestor, son of Neleus, great pride of the Achaeans, you ask whence we have come, and indeed I shall tell you. We have come from Ithaca, under Neron on a private matter, not pertaining to our land, and about which I shall speak. I come in search of rumor of my father, divine Odysseus, of steadfast mind, if of such a thing I might hear, my father whom they say fought together with you, and sacked the city of the Trojans. We have learned about all the others who went to war there, just where each of them suffered his bitter end. But of that man, the son of Cronus, made even his death unsearchable, for no one is able to make plain where he perished, whether subdued on land by enemies or on the sea by a wave of Amphitrite. So I come now to your knees, if perhaps you be willing to speak of the bitter death of divine Odysseus, if you saw it with your own eyes, or heard story of it from some other wanderer, for his mother bore him to sorrow beyond all men. And do not, out of reverence or pity of me, speak soothingly, but tell me just what you saw when you encountered it, I beseech you. If ever noble Odysseus, my father, promised you anything and fulfilled it in the land of Troy, where you Achaeans suffered so, be mindful of it now, and do speak the truth to me. Nestor, the Gerenian horseman, answered him, O friend, you bring to mind the mighty sorrows we endured in that place. We, the ungovernable sons of the Achaeans, sorrows we have we knew as we had wandered in ships of the misty sea in search of plunder, wherever Achilles led us, or the sorrows that befell us fighting at the great city of Lord Priam, where the best of us were slain. There warlike Aias lies, there Achilles and Patroclus, a match for the gods in council. There my own dear son Antilochus, although altogether blameless and strong, excelling in speed of foot as a fighter, and many other afflictions we suffered besides. Who among men doomed to die can recite them all? If you tarried 5 years or even 6 years inquiring about the afflictions divine Achilles suffered there, you still would return to your native land without having come to the end of them. For 9 years we were busy stitching sorrows for the Trojans by every kind of ruse, and just barely did the Cronian bring our conquest to pass. No one ever wished to match wits with your father there, since divine Odysseus far excelled in every kind of cunning. If indeed you are the scion born of that man. Amazement grips me as I look at you, for your speech is just like his. One wouldn't imagine that a younger man might speak in just that manner. Now, while we were there, when Odysseus and I spoke in assembly or in council, we held one spirit in our minds. We advised the Argives how matters might go for the best. But after we sacked the high city of Priam, we sailed away in ships, and a god scattered the Achaeans. For Zeus plotted in his breast a grievous return for the Argives, since by no means were all of them thoughtful or just. Many fell under the evil doom because of the lethal anger of Athena, that gray green-eyed daughter of a mighty sire. For she set the two sons of Atreus at strife with one another. These two called all the Achaeans to assembly for no good reason, without proper arrangements at sundown, and the sons of the Achaeans came besotted with wine, and the two of them spoke, giving reasons why they had gathered the people. Menelaus bade all of the Achaeans to bethink themselves of their return over the broad back of the sea, but this in no way heartened Agamemnon, for he planned to hold back the people and offer holy hecatombs so that he might appease the terrible wrath of Athena. Fool, for he did not know that she was not to be persuaded. The mind of the gods, whose coming into being is forever, is not easily turned. So the two of them stood their ground and exchanged harsh words, and the well-grieved Achaeans were roused to an awesome uproar. And the plan was pleased them was in truth two plans. We passed the night, the partisans of each view, pondering hostilities against each other, for truly it was Zeus who was plotting the mischief. At dawn, a part of us launched ships on the gleaming sea, and put on board our possessions and the low-girded women, but half of the people stayed back with the son of Atreus, Agamemnon, shepherd of the people, and half went on board and rowed away. And those ships sailed out swiftly, for some god made smooth the capacious sea. When we had sailed as far as Tenedos, we offered holy sacrifice to the gods, being eager to reach home. But Zeus had no thought to grant our return, for he awakened wicked strife for a second time. Some of us turned the curved ships around and took off. In particular, wise Odysseus, that man of many and varied counsels, now took the side of Agamemnon. But I, with all the ships that followed me, fled, since I recognized some god was pondering evil. And the warlike son of Tydeus fled and urged his men onward. Eventually, blond Menelaus came after us and caught up to us on Lesbos. Now we were debating among ourselves about the long sea voyage, whether to sail north of rugged Chios, close upon the island of Paisria, keeping Chios herself on the left, or south of Chios, by windy Mimas. We asked the god to show us an omen, and the god did. It led us to cut through the ocean towards Euboea, so that we might expeditiously flee the most grievous danger. A sharp wind rose to blow us on apace, and rapidly sped us over the paths of the fishes, and landed us on a Gerestos by nightfall. We set many thighs of bulls before Poseidon, having happily traversed the great sea. It was on the 4th day that the men of Diomedes, son of Tydeus, tamer of horses, stopped their balanced ships at Argos, while I held on for Pylos. Never did the wine fail once, from the time when the gods sent us onward. Thus did I arrive, dear child, without news of just which Achaeans were safe and who had perished. But of what we subsequently learned while sitting in our halls, it is right that you should learn, nor should I conceal it from you. They say that the Myrmidons, zealous spearmen, arrived safely, those men whom the illustrious son of Achilles led, and Philoctetes, the resplendent son of Pios, also arrived safely. Idomenes led all of his companions back to Crete, all who escaped the war, and the sea claimed none. Of the son of Atreus you yourself had heard, though you dwell far away, how he came home. Aegisthus prepared for him a bitter demise. But even Agamemnon, though sadly exacted recompense, such a good thing it is for a man to leave a son behind at his death. For his son exacted payment from his father's slayer, Aegisthus the beguiler, who killed Orestes' famous father. So must you, O friend, for I see you are handsome and tall. Be courageous as well, so that all in generations to come may speak well of you. Strong-minded Telemachus answered him, O Nestor, son of Neleus, pride of the Achaeans, that son exacted payment indeed, and the Achaeans will carry his fame far and wide. It surely will be known to men to come. Would that the gods endowed me with such capacity that I too might exact payment, in my case from the wooers, grievous and overbearing, wanton and ungovernable, who are ever devising mischief against me. But the gods have spun no such happy fortune for my father and myself. Nevertheless, I must endure. Nestor, the Geranian horseman, answered him, O friend, since you bring these matters to my mind and do speak of them, they do say that your mother's many wooers indeed are plotting wickedness against you in your halls, in your despite. But tell me whether you're willingly overwhelmed by them, or whether the people in your country despise you, hanging on the voice of some god. Who knows but that Odysseus might return to make them pay for their violence, either by himself or with a whole company of Achaeans. Would that gray, green-eyed Athena cared for you, just as she cared for illustrious Odysseus in the land of the Trojans, where we Achaeans suffered such woes, for I never saw gods so plainly showing their love as when Athena stood beside Odysseus. Were she to love you in this way, those people would soon forget about that marriage. Strong-minded Telemachus answered, Old man, I do not think this word of yours will be accomplished, for what you speak is too great a thing. Awe overwhelms me at the thought of it. I have no hope that it could happen, not even if the gods themselves should wish it. Then gray, green-eyed Athena said to him, Telemachus, what a word is this that has passed through the fence of your teeth? A god, if he wishes it, can easily save a man, even from far away. I myself would rather see the day of my returning, though I come home late, and only after performing many labors than, with an early arrival, be slain at my own hearth, as Agamemnon was by the guile of Aegisthus, and by his sometimes bedmate. But in truth, even the gods can't hold death away from a man who is dear to them, when a destructive doom of death that brings long-lasting woe takes him down. Strong-minded Telemachus answered her again, Mentor, let us speak no more of these grievous matters, for the return of that man can no longer occur, from the deathless ones have worked his death indeed and his black doom. But I want to ask Nestor about one thing, since he is more versed than others in matters of justice and intellect. They say that he has been the lord over 3 generations of men, so that he seems to me a god to look upon. O Nestor, son of Neleus, do tell me truly, how was wide-ruling son of Atreus slain? Where was Menelaus? What kind of homicide did Aegisthus the beguiler devise for him, since Aegisthus killed a man far mightier than he? Was it that Menelaus was absent from Achaean Argos, wandering elsewhere among men, that Aegisthus had the stomach to kill his brother? The Geranian horseman Nestor answered him, "Certainly I will tell you, child, the truth entire. Indeed, you yourself can surmise how things might have transpired if fair-haired Menelaus, son of Atreus, upon his return from Troy, had come upon Aegisthus living in his halls. And if they found him dead, they'd not have piled earth upon him, but birds and dogs would have devoured him as he lay in the field far from the city. Nor would the Achaeans' women have bewailed him, for monstrous was the deed that he devised. While we were there in Troy, performing our many labors, Aegisthus, unobstructed in some horse pasturing nook back in Argos, was ever attending to seduce Agamemnon's wife with his beguiling words. At first Clytemnestra spurned the business, all unwilling, for she by birth had a good heart. Now she had an attendant, a poet-singer, whom the son of Atreus had appointed when he departed for Troy, to keep an eye on his wife. But when the fate of the gods fell out that she should succumb to Aegisthus, Aegisthus took the poet to a desolate island and abandoned him there for the birds to prey upon, while he took her, now as willing as he, to his own house. He burned many bull thighs on altars of the gods, and offered up many offerings, woven thighs and gold ones, since an egregious deed had already been accomplished beyond what he had hoped for in his heart. We were coming back from Troy, sailing together, the son of Atreus and I, knowing intimate friendship with one another. But when we came to Sunion, the cape of Athens, Phoebus Apollo attacked with his kindly arrows and killed Menelaus' steersman, while he was holding the steering oar of the rushing ship in his hands. It was Phrontis, son of Oneator, who excelled all tribes of men in steering when a wild squall blows. So Menelaus remained there, though eager to sail onward, to bury his companion and burn his possessions on a pyre. But when Menelaus, now back on the wine-dark sea in his hollow ships, swiftly arrived at the steep peak of Malea, wide-watching Zeus contrived a hateful plan for him. He blew blasts of whistling wind, and the waves grew monstrous like mountains. Menelaus divided his fleet into two, and sent one part to Crete, where the Cydonians dwelt by the water of the Iardanus. There a certain sheer smooth cliff drops to the salty water by the borders of Gortyn. On the misty sea, where Notus, the south wind, sends a great wave against a promontory on the left towards Phaestos, a small rock holding back the ocean. They arrived at that place, and with a mighty effort the men eluded destruction, but the waves threw the ship against the promontory, and wind and water brought the other 5 dark-prowed ships to Egypt. Gathering gold and other goods in abundance, Menelaus wandered with his vessel among people of alien speech, while Aegisthus committed those bitter deeds in his home. After Aegisthus slew Agamemnon, he ruled Mycenae the Golden for 7 years, and the people stood beneath him. In the 8th year, his bane came, Orestes. The boy killed his father's killer, Aegisthus the beguiler, because the man had murdered his famous sire. And having slain Aegisthus, Orestes made a funeral feast for the Argives over his detested mother and the craven Aegisthus. On the same day came Menelaus, master of the battle shout, bearing much treasure, as much as the ship could carry. O you, and you, O friend, do not tarry too long far from your home, leaving your treasured belongings with men in your palace, overbearing as you describe, lest they devour it all and split up your wealth, and you'll have made a pointless journey. But I bid and direct you to go to Menelaus, for he has just come back from a foreign place and an alien people, from which one might have harbored hope of his return. For first a tempest drove him off course into such a great sea that not even birds would come back therefrom within the same year. It began so mighty and terrible. But go now with your ship and your companions, or if you prefer to travel over land, I'll furnish a chariot and horses, and my own sons will be guides for you to resplendent Lacedaemon, where fair-haired Menelaus dwells. Inquire of him yourself, that he might speak the truth. He will not answer falsely, for he is strong in mind. So he spoke, and the sun set, and darkness came. The goddess, gray-eyed Athena, spoke. Old man, you say these things in accord with the way things are, but now, cut out the tongues and mix the wine, pouring libations to Poseidon and the other immortals, so that we may bed, for it is the hour. The light has gone down beneath the darkness, and it is not fitting for us to sit at the feast of the gods, but to be getting along. Thus spoke the daughter of Zeus, and they obeyed her utterance. And the heralds poured water over their hands, and the young boys filled craters with beverage, and served everyone, pouring out drops from the crater into the cups of each to be used for libation. They threw the tongues on the fire, and rising, they poured the libations. And when they'd poured these acts and drunk as much as they wished, Athena and godlike Telemachus both wished to repair to the ship, but Nestor detained them, accosting them with his speech. Zeus and the other immortals would forbid it, that you should leave my house for your swift ship, as if from someone altogether destitute and naked who possesses neither cloaks nor blankets aplenty in his house, by means of which soft sleep might come both to himself and guest strangers. For I have woolen cloaks and beautiful blankets. The dear son of the hero Odysseus surely shall down on the deck of a ship, as long as I live and my children after me are left in my halls, to host guest strangers, whoever comes to my palace. Then the goddess, gray-eyed Athena, spoke to him again. For you to say these things is very fitting, old friend, and it is fitting for Telemachus to be persuaded, since this is very right. But while he follows along with you so that he might sleep in your halls, I will myself repair to the ship and encourage the men, speaking to each one, for I tell you that compared to them, I am an older man. The young folks followed in friendship, being the same age as great-hearted Telemachus. I will lie down there now, in the hollow black ship, and at dawn, I'll go to the great-hearted Cauconians, where a debt is owed to me, neither new nor inconsiderable. You should send Telemachus on his way with your son and a chariot, since he has come to your house. Give him horses, the strongest you have, and the lightest afoot. Thus spoke Athena and departed, taking the form of a sea vulture, and amazement seized all at the sight. And the old man was amazed when he saw it with his own eyes, and he took Telemachus by the hand and spoke up and addressed them. O friends, I do not anticipate that you will become a wicked man or craven if the gods thus follow as your guides, even when you are young. For this is surely none other of those who hold Olympus than the daughter of Zeus, most illustrious Tritogenia, who honored your noble father among the Argives. O queen, be propitious to me, grant good repute to myself and to my children and my wife. I shall sacrifice to you a yearling heifer, broad, brown, and untamed, whom no man ever brought beneath a yoke. Such a one shall I sacrifice, having covered her horns with gold. So he spoke, praying, and Pallas Athena listened, and Nestor, the Geranian horseman, led them, his sons and his daughters' husbands, to his handsome palace. That's about all.
Good job.
It's up 6 times.
Okay. You can use this one. You can use this one. Why do you use this one? It's the same book.
right here.
When early dawn with rose-colored When early dawn with rose-colored fingers appeared, Nestor, the Grenian horseman, rose from his bed and came out, sat down on the stones, white and gleaming of polish. In the front of the high doors, Neleus, equal to the god as a counselor, used to take his seat on these stones, but he had already succumbed to his fate and gone down to Hades, and Nestor now sat there in turn as watch over Anchians hold the scepter. His sons were gathered about the throne as they came from their chamber. Echephron and Nastrius and Perseus and Artius, the godlike Thremesides, and the Lord Piastrius joined them as a sixth. And they led godlike Timaeus and had him to be seated. Nestor, the Granian horseman, was the first to speak among them. Charles.
Quickly, my children, fulfill my desire that I might seek the favor of Athena, very first of the gods, who actually came to me as some Katos feast. Let a man go to the field for heifer and have her come here quickly. Let a cowman drive her, and let someone go to the black ship of great heritage Telemachus, and bring all of his companies. Leave only two behind, and someone should summon the goldsmith Lycurgus to come here, that may overlay gold on horns of the heifer, and let all others remain here together, and have the servants get busy throughout the place, preparing a glorious feast, setting seats and putting wood about altar, and let them bring clear gleaming water. So he spoke, and everyone took to their labors. The heifer came from the field, and the men of great-hearted Telemachus came from the shapely swift ship. And Smith came, holding bronze tools in his hand, hammer and anvil and fire tongues, with which he works gold. And Athena came to accept the sacrifice. An old man, Nestor, horse chariot driver, presented the gold, and the goldsmith guided the horns of the heifer with art, so the goddesses would be delighted, beholding the guiled offering. Stratios and breastplanted Achephron led the heifer by the horns.
And Artios came from his chamber, in one hand bearing water in a basin adorned with flowery ornaments, in the other a basket of barley grains for sprinkling. Thrasymachus, steady in battle, stood by, holding a sharp axe in his hand to strike the heifer. Perseus held the vessel to receive the heifer's blood, and the old man Nestor, horse chariot driver, started the rite with hand cleansing water and the sprinkling of barley, and he prayed profusely to Athena as he cut off the hair from the head of the victim and threw it in the fire. And when they had prayed and scattered the barley, the great-hearted son of Nestor, Thrasymachus, instantly drew near and drove home the blow. The axe cut the two neck tendons and released the vigor of the heifer. And Nestor's daughters and the wives of his sons and his own honored wife Eurydice and the eldest daughter of Clemenos cried out in holy alliteration. And men raised the head of the victim, then from the wide path earth and held it. And Pistrios, leader of the men, cut its throat. When the black blood flowed, the spirit departed from its bones, and they dismembered her and cut out the thigh pieces according to the apportioned order, and cut them over in a double fold of fat, and put raw flesh on top of it. And the old man burned them on skids and poured gleaming wine upon them. And the youths held in their hands forks with 5 tines. And then, when the slice of thigh meat was fully consumed, and they tasted entrails, they cut up what remained.
Nice. Want to read more?
But no.
Where are you at? Where are you at? Here? Where you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Where? Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, right at the top.
And pierced the pieces with skewers, holding in their hands the pointed spits, and roasted the pieces. Pretty Polycaste all this while was bathing Telemachus. She was the youngest daughter of Nestor, son of Neleus, and when she had bathed him and anointed him with olive oil, she threw a fair cloak and tunic about him. And when he came out of the bath, his body was like the immortals, and he took his seat by Nestor, shepherd of the people. Now when they had roasted the outer parts of the meat and drawn them off the spits, they sat down and feasted, and worthy butlers served them, pouring wine in golden goblets. And when they'd done with desire for eating and drinking, Nestor, the Gerenian horseman, was first to speak among them. My boys, do yoke now the fair-maned horses to the chariot for Telemachus, that he might proceed with his journey. So he spoke, and they heard and obeyed, and quickly they yoked swift horses to the chariot, and the maidservants supplied bread and wine and such delicacies as God-nurtured kings are accustomed to consuming. Telemachus entered the beautiful chariot, and Pisistratus, Nestor's son, mounted it next to him, and took hold of the reins with his hands, and applied the whip to the horses to get them going. Not unwillingly, the team flew onto the plain and left the lofty citadel of Pylos. All day they shook the yoke that held about them. The sun set, and the roads were shadow. They came to the house of Diocles, son of Ortilochus, whom Alphaeus sired. They spent the night there. Diocles set before them that which is due to guest strangers. When early dawn with rose-colored fingers appeared, they yoked the horses to the ornamented chariot, and mounted and drove out from the gateway and through the echoing colonnades, and applied the whip to the horses to get them going. Not unwilling, the team flew onward, and they came to a wheat-bearing plain over which they made good progress, for the swift steeds sped them onward, and the sun set, and all the roads were shadow. We are now at book 4. Who would like to come forward? Please come on.
Is that translation?
I don't know. It's mine. I wrote it. It's Charles Stein. Do you want to change, or do you like that translation?
I like the translation.
Go for it.
Okay. They came to Lacedaemon, a land of hills and hollows, and drove to the palace of illustrious Menelaus, and found him feasting his many kinsmen in honor of the weddings of both his blameless son and of his daughter. He was sending his daughter to the son of Achilles, breaker of enemies' ranks. In Troy, Menelaus first nodded consent and promised to give her to him, and now the gods were bringing the marriage to pass. He was sending her with horses and chariots to live in the city of the Myrmidons, over which the son of Achilles now was lord. And for Megaphentes, his son, born a slave, full-grown now, Menelaus was leading the daughter of Elector home to Sparta. For the gods vouchsafed to Helen to no other offspring, after she bore one child, lovely Hermione, who had the form of a golden Aphrodite. So they were feasting in the grand high-ceilinged palace, and the neighbors and kinsfolk of illustrious Menelaus were having a grand time. And a godlike poet-singer was among them, singing and playing the lyre. And tumblers were tumbling in their midst as he struck up his song. And the prince Telemachus and the splendid son of Nestor, together with their horses, stopped at the gates of the palace. Lord Eteanos, the ready squire of the illustrious Menelaus, saw them, and he scurried through the halls of the shepherd of the people to bring the news. And standing near to the shepherd of the people, he spoke winged words. There are 2 god-foster strangers here, O Menelaus, 2 men that seem to be the very seed of great Zeus. But say, shall we unharness their horses for them, or send them away to some other host who might prove more hospitable to them than we? Fair-haired Menelaus was greatly vexed by this. You never seem a fool before, O Eteneus, son of Botheus, but now you babble folly like a child. Before we came back home here, surely as guest strangers, we enjoyed many feasts provided by other men, and hoped that Zeus thereafter would grant respite for our sorrow. So unharness the horses of the strangers, that we may entertain them at the table properly. So he spoke, And Eteneus sped through the halls and commanded the other ready squires to follow him. And they loosed their horses, covered with sweat, from their yokes, and tied them up at the horse stalls, and flung them down, spelt beside them, and it mixed up with white barley. And they leaned the chariot against the glistening wall, just inside the entrance, and led the men inside. They marveled to see the home of the God-fostered king, for there was a radiance over the high-roofed palace of the illustrious Menelaus. And when they'd had their fill of marveling, they went to the well-polished baths and bathed. And when the maids had bathed them and anointed them with oil, they threw their tunics and cloaks about them and sat them down on thrones next to Menelaus, son of Atreus. A handmaiden brought water for their hands in a beautiful golden pitcher and poured it into a silver basin to wash in, and drew a polished table up beside them. A solemn servant served them bread and numerous delicacies, generously providing from the store she had at hand. And a meat carver lifted before them platters of all sorts of viands and positioned golden goblets at their sides. Then fair-haired Menelaus welcomed them all and said, "Eat and be happy, and when you're done with dining, we will ask you who are among men, for the breeding of your begetters has not been lost. You are of the race of sceptered kings. Base-born persons don't breed the likes of you." So he spoke, and he took in mind a richly roasted chunk of the back of an ox that had been served to him to show him honor. And they stretched their hands to the bounty spread before them. And when they put away their desire for food and drink, Telemachus said to the son of Nestor out of earshot, he thought of the others, "O son of Nestor, dear to my heart, look at the bronze gleaming everywhere throughout the echoing halls, the flashing of gold and electrum, ivory and silver. The court of Zeus on Olympus must be like this. Here is such unlimited abundance that I am awestruck to look at it." But Menelaus heard what he said and addressed them with winged words. "Dear boys, no mortal can compete with Zeus, for immortal are his palaces and possessions. But among mortals, there might be someone, or then again, perhaps not. For after suffering much and wandering wide, I brought it all home in ships in the 8th year. I had wandered over Cyprus and Phoenicia and Egypt, and also Lydia, where lambs are born with full-grown horns, and a sheep gives birth 3 times in the course of 1 year. There neither lord nor shepherd lacks of cheese or meat or sweet milk, but flocks yielded for the milking in any season. While I was gathering great wealth in these wanderings, another man murdered my brother unawares through the stealth and treachery of his wicked wife, so that I am now lord of all the wealth, but I take no joy in it. You may very well have heard of these things from your fathers, whoever in fact you are, that I have suffered many troubles, and that I let an established house with many treasures fall to ruin. But I would that I'd had but 1/3 of all the booty in my palace, if only the men were safe who perished in the broad land of Troy, far from the horse-pasturing Argos. Often I sit weeping in my halls with grief for them all. One moment I discharge that grief in my heart with sobbing, and the next I stop. For soon one has one's fill of chill lamenting, but I do not so much mourn for all these men, mourn as I do, as for one man who makes my sleep and food hateful to me when my mind turns toward him. And no Achaean labored as he, or came upon such exigent toils as Odysseus, yet for him there was to be a fate only of woe, and for me a sorrow for him that never ceases. He has been gone so long, and we do not even know if he lives or if he perished. And old Laertes mourns him now, and wise old Penelope and Telemachus, whom he left a newborn boy in his house. So he spoke, and he made Telemachus want to weep for his father. And tears indeed fell from his eyes to the ground when he heard his father's name, and he raised his purple cloak with his hands to his eyes. And Menelaus knew who he was, and pondered in his heart and in his mind if he should let him tell of his father on his own, or whether first to question him in detail and lead him on. And in the moment that he was considering this, Helen came out of her high-roofed, fragrant chamber, looking like Artemis with arrows of gold, and Adreste was with her and put in place a finely crafted seat for her. And Alcippe brought a carpet of soft wool, and Philo a silver basket, a gift from Alcandre, the wife of Polybos of Thebes in Egypt, where the greatest of all palace treasures lie. He gave Menelaus 2 silver baths, 2 tripods, and 10 talents of gold. Apart from this, his wife gave splendid gifts to Helen, a golden distaff and a basket of silver with wheels underneath to go with it, and rims finished with gold. Philo, the handmaid, carried this in and placed it next to Helen. It was full of fine spun yarn, and the distaff was stretched across it, carrying blue-black wool. Helen sat down on the chair under her feet, a footstool, and at once she questioned her husband about each matter. "Do we know, O Menelaus, fostered by the gods, who these people are who have come to our home? Shall I tell them the truth, or must I dissemble? For my heart bids me to speak. I declare I've never seen one person so much resemble another, man or woman. Wonder grips me as I gaze. As this man does Telemachus, the son of great-hearted Odysseus, whom Odysseus left behind as a newborn child in his house, when you Achaeans, on account of me, shameless dog that I am, came under the walls of Troy preparing for war. Fair-haired Menelaus answered her, I see the likeness too, woman. These are his feet and hands, the looks in his eyes, his head, and the hair upon it. And just now, as I was speaking about Odysseus, of all the toil and woe that man endured for me, he let a bitter tear fall from his eyes and raised his purple cloak to cover them. Paistratos, Nestor's son, responded, Menelaus, son of Atreus, fostered by the gods, chief of the people. This is indeed the son of the man, as you say. But he is modest and somewhat daunted at heart, not wanting to appear for the first time before you in a garrulous manner. For we both delight in your voice as in that of a god. Nestor, the Duranian horseman, sent me with Telemachus to serve as a guide for him. The boy is eager to see you, that you might put some thought into his mind or suggest some action, for a child in the halls has many sorrows when his father is gone. There's no one at home to come to his aid. Such now is the case with Telemachus. There's no one in this country to help him stave off calamity. Fair-haired Menelaus answered and said, Then indeed the son of a man very dear has come to my house, a man who on my account endured many labors. I thought that upon his coming I should have welcomed him beyond all other Argives, if only wide-watching Zeus, who holds Olympus, had granted that both of us return in swift ships over the salt sea. And I'd have found him a city to dwell in Argos, and built him a palace, bring him out of Ithaca with his belongings and his son and all his people, expelling those who lived around some city and who ruled over by me. And since he would be there, we'd meet together often, and nothing would have had the power to part us in our friendship and our joy in one another till the black cloud of death should have covered us round. But the God who denied his return to that unhappy man only must have grudged it to me. So he spoke. A desire to weep arose in them all. Argive Helen, born of Zeus, did cry. Telemachus wept, and Menelaus also. Nor did the son of Nestor keep a tearless eye, for he was mindful in his heart of blameless Antilochus, whom the son of shining dawn, gleaming Memnon, slew. Thinking of Antilochus, he spoke winged words. Son of Atreus, whenever we bring you to mind in the halls and question one another, old man Nestor says that you are the most sagacious of men. But now, if it may be, listen to me, for I take no pleasure in weeping at mealtime. Yet early dawn will soon be upon us, and I say it is no shame to weep for one who has died and gone to his fate. This is the only boon for wretched mortals, to tear one's hair and let a tear fall from one's cheek. My brother has died, not the worst of the Argives. You may have known him. I never met or saw him. But they say Antilochus was fleet of foot, above all other man, and a true warrior. Fair-haired Menelaus spoke in answer. O friend, when you say such things, a wise man speaks and acts, even a much older man than you. And you are of such a father that you do speak wisely. It is easy to recognize the seed of a man from whom Cronion spins good fortune through marriage and by birth, as he granted to Nestor good fortune, without a break. For all his days that he should have reached old age in his halls with such a gentle decline, and that his sons have such good sense and valor with the spear. But now let us go out of this lamenting, which was now just put upon us, and be mindful of our supper. Let them pour water over our hands. Telemachus and I shall have tales as to tell as the morning comes. So he spoke, and as Phalion indeed, the ready squire of illustrious Menelaus, poured water on their hands, and they stretched their hands to the bounty set before them. Then Helen, born to Zeus, again took thought and deftly cast the medicine in the wine that they were just then drinking, a drug for keeping pain away, for neutralizing anger, for fostering forgetfulness of every evil. Once it is mixed in the crater, whoever swallows it down will know that no tears, sorry. Here we go. Once it is mixed in the crater, whoever swallows it down will know no tears that day, not even if his mother or his father lay dead before him, or if his brother or dear son were cut down by some bronze blade before his eyes. The daughter of Zeus possessed cunning medicine such as this one. Polydamna, the Egyptian wife of Thon, had given them to her, for in that country, the seed-bestowing ground bestows more medicine seeds than any other locality. Many for excellent uses, many for ill. Everyone there is a healer endowed with knowledge beyond persons of other climes, and being of the lineage of Paeon. And when she'd put in the medicine and called for the wine to be poured, she returned to the telling of tales. God fostered Menelaus, son of Atreus, and you two sons of the most noble of men. Zeus bestows both good and ill, now one, now the other, for he is capable of everything. But now, Remain you seated at banquet in the halls, and enjoy the telling of tales. I myself shall tell what is appropriate. I cannot recount everything that Odysseus of the long-enduring mind accomplished, but what a work was this that he performed in the land of Troy, where you Achaeans suffered your woes. He submitted himself to blows from his own hand and threw a filthy garment over his shoulders until he donned the appearance of a beggar. Odysseus, a man whom, among the ships, was the last beggarly of persons, and in such a state he stole into the city of his enemies, the city of Troy. And the Trojans all might as well have been children, so incognizant were they of who he was. But I knew him, in spite of his disguise, and questioned him. In his cunning, he wanted to keep clear of me. However, when I had bathed him and anointed him with oil and put fresh raiment upon him, I swore a mighty oath not to reveal to the Trojans that he was Odysseus until he returned to the swift ships and the huts. Then he told me the plan of the Achaeans entire. And once he'd slain many Trojans with bronze, long tapering weapon, he returned to the Argives, reconnaissance accomplished. Then the Trojan women shrieked in distress, but I rejoiced, for by then my heart had turned, and I wanted to go back home. For I regretted the folly Aphrodite had foisted upon me when she led me away from my dear native country, abandoning my child, my bridal chamber, and my husband, a man deficient in nothing, neither in wisdom nor in comeliness.
Believe it or not, this is a well-connected classics department using the latest technologies.
Sure.
We'll do one of these. How about a little do not disturb?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
You blame Rand for it.
Fair-haired Menelaus spoke in response to her. These things, woman, you speak as they were. But now I have learned the quality of mind of many warriors and traveled widely over the earth. But I never saw with my eye such a man as long-enduring Odysseus of steady heart. What a thing this was also that he accomplished and endured in the polished horse, inside of which we chieftains of the Argives all were sitting, waiting to bring death and fate to the Trojans. Then you came there. You must have been called by a deity who wished to bestow glory on the Trojans. Deiphobos followed you on the way. 3 times you circled the hollow ambuscade, feeling about with your hands, and you called the chiefs of Danaans by their names, assuming one by one the voices of the wives of all the Argives. The son of Tydeus, and I also divine Odysseus, sitting there in the middle of the horse, heard how you called. And the 2 of us were ardent to rise up and come out, or else to answer your cries from within, but Odysseus stopped us in spite of our desire. All the other sons of the Achaeans stayed quiet except for Anticlus, who was about to call out, but Odysseus clapped his mouth shut with strong hands and thus saved all the Achaeans. He held him like that until Athena led you away. And strong-minded Telemachus again responded. God fostered Menelaus, son of Atreus, arouser of the people. This only makes it harder, for these things had no power to prevent his grievous ruin, even if he'd had a heart of iron inside him. But now do show us to bed, so that by means of sweet sleep we may take joy in resting. So he spoke. And Argive Helen commanded the maids, and put bedsteads beneath the colonnades, and throw upon the beautiful purple blankets and coverlets over these, and then to clothe them all with fleecy oaks. And the maids went out of the halls holding torches in their hands and made up the bedsteads. And the herald led out the guests, and they went into their rest there, just outside the halls. The prince Telemachus and the splendid son of Nestor. But the son of Atreus lay down in the inner recesses of the high-roofed palace, and beside him lay Helen with her long robe, radiant woman. When early dawn rose with rose-colored fingers appeared, Menelaus, son of the battle cry, master of the battle cry, from his bed, donned his raiment and slung a sharp sword on his shoulders, and went from his chamber looking like a god. Menelaus sat down beside Telemachus and uttered, "What necessity, O Telemachus, has brought you to like a daemon over the broad back of the sea? Something public or private? Tell me truthfully." Strong-minded Telemachus responded, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, fostered by Zeus, leader of the people, I have come on the chance that you might hear news of my father. You might have news of my father. My house is being eaten away, my rich lands devastated, and my palace is full of hostile men who are forever slaughtering my sheep and cattle. There are my mother's wooers, insolent beyond enduring. Because of them I come to your knees, that you might be able to tell me of my father's death, if perhaps you were to witness to it, or heard the story of his wanderings from another. For his mother bore him for sorrow beyond all others, and do not, out of respect for me or pity, speak soothingly, but tell me just how, if you encountered it, you saw it. I beg you, if in any way my father, noble Odysseus, promised you anything and fulfilled it, either in word or action, when the Achaeans were suffering their woes, think of that now, and speak to me truthfully. Then fair-haired Menelaus, terribly vexed, said to him, outrageous that craven men should wish to lie in the bed of a stout-hearted hero. It is as if a deer had put her newborn suckling fawns to rest in a mighty lion's lair, while she went grazing over grassy glens and mountain slopes seeking pasture. Surely when that lion comes back to his lair, he will wreak doom upon the fawns and deer. So shall Odysseus bring their fate to these men. Would, O Father Zeus, Apollo, and Athena, that he were as he was when in Lesbos he wrestled Philomelides and threw him roundly, and all the Achaeans were glad. Oh, would that Odysseus in such great strength as that might engage the wooers. Then all of them would meet swift doom for all their wooing. As for those matters about which you speak and beseech me, I'll not evade the question or speak of other things, nor will I deceive you. But of what that truthful old man of the sea informed me, I shall hide nothing and conceal not a word. The gods detained me just outside the river Egypt, though I wished to sail on, because I had failed to accomplish perfect hecatombs. The gods intended us to remember their commands. There is a certain island in the surging sea before the mouth of the Nile. They call it Pharos, as far off shore as a hollow ship might sail in the course of a day if a sharp wind blows behind her. It has a harbor with good anchorage from which men launch their ships upon the sea, having drawn supplies of black water. The gods detained me there for 20 days, during which time no wind. And now provisions would have been spent in the strength of my men as well, had not one of the gods taken pity on me and saved me, the daughter of mighty Proteus, the old man of the sea, Idothea, for her heart in particular I'd excited. She joined me as I wandered apart from companions. They were forever roaming about, fishing with their crooked hooks, for hunger galled them. She stood near and spoke, are you a fool, O stranger, intentionally negligent, or one of those who takes pleasure in his own misery? I said, I will tell you, whoever you are among the goddesses, I am not willingly held here. But there must be some immortal I have offended. Perhaps you can tell me, if for gods indeed know all things, what god detains me, and whether I am to return, and how I might make my way onto the mighty sea. So I spoke, and at once the goddess answered, willingly indeed will I tell you, stranger. The infallible old man of the sea, a certain immortal named Proteus, the Egyptian, frequents this place. He knows the deeps of every ocean, beyond being among the denizens of Poseidon. They say he is my father, the one who sired me. If laying an ambush you catch him, he will prescribe your way for you and give the measure of your path, and discourse your return. How you might make your way on the mighty sea. He'll tell as well, if you wish it, O person nourished by Zeus, what has transpired for good and for ill back in the home in your halls, while you have been away on your grievous sojourn. So she spoke, and I responded, now you must tell me how I'm to ambush that old god, lest he, seeing me, anticipate my purpose and avoid me, for it is difficult for a mortal to master a deity. The shining goddess replied, certainly, stranger. I'll lay it all out most plainly. When the sun has reached the zenith, the infallible old man of the sea emerges from the brine on the breath of Zephyr, hidden by a black ripple. Once out, he beds into a hollow cave. About him you'll see sea cows, a brood belonging to a beautiful sea daughter, a crowd of them sleeping, having themselves come out of the salty gray water. And bitter is the odor of their breath, for they reek of the sea depths. Leading you there at break, I shall set you down in a row. For your part, you must carefully select 3 choice companions, the best you have in your ships, and I shall instruct you in all the deadly wiles of that old man. First, he'll count and check on his sea cows, and as soon as he's seen them all and grouped in their 5s, he'll lay himself down in their midst like a shepherd among his flocks. Now, once you have seen him bed down, you must summon your strength and courage to seize him and hold him fast, though he be eager and vehement to escape you, for he'll certainly try, transforming himself into every manner of entity, beings that creep on the earth and water creatures and things that inhabit furious god-struck fire. But you must hold unyieldingly, and all the more apply a crushing grip. But when of his own will he speaks and questions you, having resumed the form you saw he held when first he bedded down, then, O hero, let the old man go, and ask him which of the gods has provoked by you, and inquire of your return, and how you might make your way onto the mighty sea. So saying, she plunged beneath the surging water, and I went to my ships, which stood beached on the sand, my heart grown dark with brooding over many matters as I walked along. But when I arrived down at the sea at my ships, we prepared our evening meal, and ambrosial night came on, and then we lay down to sleep where the waves broke on the shore. When early dawn appeared with rose-colored fingers by the strand of the wide-pathed sea, I took to beseeching the gods, and I packed those 3 companions trustworthy for any endeavor. Meanwhile, the goddess returned from the broad breast of ocean with skins of 4 sea cows, all freshly flayed, and she devised a ruse against her father. She hollowed out couches in the sand and sat down and waited. And she bade us lie down in a row and threw a skin over each of us. But the setup for the ambush was almost came a cropper, for the odor of the sea cows, bred in the salt, seemed lethal. And who would want to bed down and sleep with a sea cow? But the goddess saved us, contriving an antidote. She placed some ambrosia of a particularly sweet fragrance under each of our noses and defeated the menace of the stench. We passed the morning with patient hearts. Throngs of sea cows came out of the salt and lay themselves down in rows on the shore. And at noon, the old man emerged and found his fat sea cows and checked them all and counted their number and counted ourselves first in the reckoning of the sea creatures. Nor did he recognize anything of our stratagem. Then he lay himself down, and we fell upon him, shouting, and threw our arms about him. Nor did the old man forget his subtle craft. First he turned into a lion, full-grown, full-bearded. Then a dragon serpent, a panther, a big pig. He became a supple liquid and a lofty leafed tree. But we held our grip without let with steadfast heart. And when at last the old man, knowingly in deadly capacities, grew weary, he put these questions to us, saying, "Who of the gods, son of Atreus, taught you to do this, so that you may lay an ambush for me and took me against my will? What do you want?" I said, "You know very well, old man, so why do you ask these questions, seeking to distract me? I am stuck here on this island, unable to find a sign of any end to it, and yet I thought perhaps you might tell me. For gods know all things, who of the immortals restrains me, and whether I'm to return, and how I might make my way onto the mighty sea." So I spoke, and at once he answered, "You should have sacrificed to Zeus and the other gods before you departed. Then you might expeditiously have arrived at your native land, bailing on the wine-dark sea. But now it is not in your portion to see your friends or arrive at your well-built house until you return to the god-fed river of Egypt and sacrifice holy hecatombs to the immortal gods who possess the heavens. Then they shall show you the pathway you desire." So he spoke, but my very spirit broke within me because he directed me to go again to Egypt over the misty water, a long and tedious journey. Nevertheless, I answered, "I shall perform these rites, old man, just as you command. But tell me this, and do speak truthfully. Did all the Achaeans arrive home unharmed, whom Nestor and I left behind when we left Troy? Or were any undone by cruel death in their ships or in the arms of friends as they brought their war to a close?" So I spoke, and at once he replied, "Son of Atreus, why do you inquire of me into these matters? It is not necessary for you to know or to search my mind, nor do I think that you'll be free from weeping for a long time once you have grasped all I tell you. Many of them were routed, many were left behind. 2 of the Achaean chieftains with their brazen coats perished on their way home. As for those whom died in battles, and you yourself were there, one alone is yet detained alive somewhere on the broad ocean. Aias was subdued, along with his long-oared ships. At first Poseidon drove him against the great rocks of the Gurai and saved him out of the sea. And he'd have escaped his fate then, though Athena despised him, had he not hurled a boastful word in his great folly. He declared he'd escaped the great chasm of the sea in spite of the gods. Poseidon heard this exorbitant utterance, and seizing his trident with his mighty fist, struck the rock of the Gurai and split it in 2. And this part stood where it was, and that part fell in the sea. The part that was broken off was just where Aias sat, at the instant of his great folly. It carried him down to the infinite surging deep, so he was destroyed when he drank salt water. Your mother managed to escape the fates. Indeed, they released him in the hollow ships, since Lady Hera saved him. But when he was about to reach the steep peak of Malaya, a squall caught him up and brought him over the ocean, teeming with fish, deeply groaning to the boundary of the country where Thyestes used to dwell. But now Thyestes' son, Aegisthus, lived. But then, away from that place, a safe return appeared, as the gods of a sudden turned the wind, and he approached his own home. And indeed he happily stepped on his native soil and touched it and kissed it. And many warm tears poured out of him, since the sight of his land was so welcome. But the watchman on his lookout caught the sight of Agamemnon. Cunning Aegisthus had set the watchman there, and promised an inducement of 2 talents of gold. He had been keeping guard for 1 whole year, lest Agamemnon pass by unnoticed. for Aegisthus was mindful of his furious strength. The watchman went to the place to bear Aegisthus the news, and at once Aegisthus, shepherd of the people, effected a cunning stratagem. He chose 20 local stalwarts and set them in ambush and gave orders to ready a feast in another part of the hall. Then Aegisthus came forth to greet Agamemnon, shepherd of the people, with horses and chariot, meanwhile contemplating egregious action. He brought him unknowing to his ruin, having feasted him. He slew him as one might slaughter an ox in a crib. And none of the men who followed the son of Atreus, and none of the men of Aegisthus was spared, but all were slain in the halls. So he spoke, but my heart was broken within me, and I sat in the sand and wept, and no longer wished to live or see the light of the sun. But when I had my fill of weeping and writhing, the infallible old man of the sea said to me, "Enough, son of Atreus. To weep without ceasing is useless. We do not bind to ourselves results in this manner. Rather, you must strive to get back to your native land as fast as you can, for either you'll find Aegisthus still there alive, or Orestes will have already slain him ahead of you, and you can attend his entombment." And my heart and spirit once again grew warm with courage in spite of their grief, and I spoke wing words to him. Now I know of these two men, but do name the third, the one who still lives but detained on the broad sea, if he has not perished. I still will wish to hear him in spite of my sorrow. So I spoke. At once he responded, "The son of Laertes, whose home is in Ithaca, I saw him on an island, spilling out copious tears in the halls of the nymph Calypso. She holds him by force of necessity, and he is unable to come back to his native land, for he has no ships with oars and no companions who might escort him over the broad back to the sea. But it is not established for you, O Menelaus, fostered by Zeus, to die and meet your fate in the horse fields of Argos. But the immortals will conduct you to the Elysian fields at the ends of the earth where fair-haired Rhadamanthus dwells, and where life is happiest for humans. No snow, no bitter weather, not even rain, but Okeanos ever rouses blast of fresh zephyr to keep men cool, because you have Helen, and you are yourself the son-in-law of Zeus." So speaking, he plunged under the undulant ocean, but I went back to the ships with my godlike companions and pondered many things in my heart as I went. And when we'd gone down to the ships and sea, we prepared our supper, and ambrosial night came on, and we took our rest then by the shore of the sea. When early dawn with rose-colored fingers appeared, we first drew our ships down to the shining water and set the masts and sails on the comely vessels. And the men went on board and took their seats at the benches and arranged in proper order. They beat the gray sea with the oars and swiftly came to the river of Egypt, whose waters fall from the gods, and accomplished perfect hecatombs, by which I put an end to the rage of the gods, whose being is forever. And I built a funeral mound tomb for Agamemnon, so that his fame might never be extinguished. And having finished these things, I went home, and the gods provided a breeze for me and sent me swiftly to my dear native country. But now, let you remain in my palace halls until the 11th or 12th day comes around, and then I shall send you forth handsomely and give you shining guest gifts, 3 horses and a well-polished chariot. And then I'll present you with a chalice, so that you, as you pour libations to the immortal gods, you'll think of me for all your days." Strong-minded Telemachus responded, "Son of Atreus, do not detain me for so long a time. Surely I'd be happy to stay for a year with you, nor would my desire for home take hold of me. For I have taken pleasure in hearing your words and your stories. But my comrades now grow restive back in sandy Pylos, for you do detain me here for quite some time. As for the gift that you would give me, let it be some treasurable object. I shall not lead horses to Ithaca, but leave them here as things of joy for you, since you are a lord over a broad plain on which the lotus of plenty. Wheat and wide-earned white barley and spelt and galangal all grow. In Ithaca there are no boulevards, no wide meadows. It is a goat-grazing land, rather more delightful than land for grazing horses. None of the islands that lean above the sea sport side meadows, Ithaca least of all." So he spoke, and the master of the battle cry, Menelaus, stroked him with his hand, smiled, and addressed him. "You are of noble blood, dear boy, that you speak in this manner. I certainly will change my guest gifts as I am quite able. Of all such gifts that lie as treasure in my palace, I shall give you the one that is most beautiful, most worthy of esteem. A crater fashioned with great art, a work of Hephaestus, all silver, with a gilded rim. Phaidamos, the warrior, king of the Sidonians, gave it to me. His palace protected me when I stopped there on my journey homeward. I wish to be yours hereafter." They say such things to each other. Meanwhile, banqueters were approaching the palace of the godlike king, driving sheep and bearing heart-cheering wine, and their wives with beautiful veils were sending bread, and they busied themselves within the halls preparing the banquet. Right at the...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. One expression of thanks among other people that I neglected to mention when we got started here today was Fritz Klug. And I'd just like to say that the stream is his. Most of what you see here being projected is his work, and we're just, he's working as digital content specialist for Bell's Brewing. We're grateful to Larry Bell for loaning him to us for the day.
You did mention him before. You also said you just couldn't get rid of him.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So he's back, like a bad but very valuable penny. He's back. But the wooers at the halls of Odysseus were amusing themselves, throwing the discus and hurling goat spears across a level surface, as was in their insolence their custom. Antinous was sitting there, and godlike Eurymachus, the leaders of the wooers, for they were the most excellent by far in apparent excellence. Noemon, son of Phronios, approached them and asked, Antinous, do we know or do we not know when Telemachus returns from sandy Pylos? For he went away in one of the ships, my ships, and I need it to sail to broad Elis. I have 12 fertile mares there, and unbroken patient demi-mules suckling beneath them. And I am of a mind to drive one of them off and break him in. So he spoke, and they were astonished, for it had not occurred to them that Telemachus had actually sailed off to Neleon Pylos. But they thought that he was somewhere among his own flocks, on his fields, or with the swineherd. Antinous, son of Eupeithes, said to him, Tell me truly, which men followed him when he went? Were they select young fellows from Ithaca, or were they hired hands, or his own slaves? For he was apparently able to man his crew. And tell me this straight out, did he make off with your black ship by force against your will? Or did you furnish it freely when he asked for it? Noemon, son of Phronius, answered, I gave it to him freely. Anyone would have done so if such a man with worries such as his upon his mind had requested it. It would have been hard to refuse it. And it was young men, the noblest from these parts after ourselves, who followed him. I was aware that Mentor went on board as their captain, or else it was some god who was in every way just like Mentor. I was amazed, for I espied splendid Mentor yesterday morning after he'd already left for Pylos. So saying, he went off to the house of his father, but Antinous and Eurymachus were indignant. They interrupted the wooers' games and sat them down, and Antinous, son of Eupeithes, in great agitation, spoke among them. His heart was full of black rage, and his eyes were flaming. An exorbitant deed, damn him, has been accomplished by Telemachus with this journey, and we thought he'd never bring himself to do it. The boy has gone off, just like that, launching a ship in spite of us and choosing as companions the best in the country. He will be our undoing hereafter. Well, may Zeus undo him before he comes to the full measure of young manhood. Bring me a swift ship and 20 companions, and I shall wait in ambush as he comes through the straits twixt Ithaca and rocky Samos. To his cost will he have sailed in search of his father. So he spoke, and everyone approved and told him to do it. And they all got up and left Odysseus' palace. Now Penelope did not go long unapprised in her chamber of the plot that they were hatching in the inner chambers of their minds. For Medon, the herald, informed her. He learned of it outside in the courtyard while they were weaving it within. He went rushing through the palace to bring Penelope the news. And as he crossed her threshold, Penelope said to him, Herald, why have the wooers dispatched you? Was it to tell the maidservants of divine Odysseus to stop their work and to prepare a feast for them? Would that you wooers were wooing no more, nor gathering anywhere else, and that you were feasting here for your last time. You are forever thronging about and pillaging the property of Telemachus. You no longer hear the voices of your fathers as you did when you were children, telling you what sort of man Odysseus was among these men that begot you, how he never committed an unjust act, nor pronounced an unfair judgment, as is the common justice of God kings, hating one man, favoring another, but he acted only with care toward every person. Your disposition and indecorous actions are quite in evidence, and you show no gratitude at all when generous things are done in your behalf. Strong-minded Medon answered her, I wish, O queen, that this were the worst of it, but the wooers are pondering something far more wicked and grievous, and I pray that Cronion won't let it come to pass. They are of a mind to kill Telemachus with the sharp bronze. On his journey homeward, he went to Pylos and bright Lacedaemon in search of news of his father. So he spoke, and her knees were loosed, and her dear heart sank. For a long time, speechlessness possessed her, both eyes filled with tears, her rich tongue checked. At last she responded, Herald, why has my boy gone away? There was no need to embark in swift sailing vessels that are for men the horses of the sea, to cross the multitudinous waters. Or was it that not even his name is to be left among men? And strong-minded Medon answered her then, I do not know if perhaps some god aroused him, or whether it was his own mind, but he wanted to go to Pylos to learn of his father's return, or else to learn about the fate that has come upon him. So he spoke and went out through the palace of Odysseus, and heart-crushing grief gushed about Penelope, and she could not endure to sit on any of the many high-backed chairs that stood in her room, but she drooped down in the doorway of the elaborately decorated chamber, moaning in sorrow. And all her maids, young and old, that were in the palace, made low moaning sounds, sorrowing with her. Penelope, sobbing in quick bursts, spoke among them. Listen, O friends, Olympian Zeus has brought me sorrow beyond all women born and reared in my time. Long ago I lost my noble, lion-hearted husband. He was cut apart among the Danaans in every kind of excellence. My noble husband, whose fame runs throughout all Hellas and through central Argos. And now the storm winds have blown away my most beloved boy out of the halls without a word. I heard nothing of his departure. Oh, cruel are you all. Not one of you had the thought to rouse me from my couch, though you all knew very well when he entered the hollow black ship that I had learned of his journey he was planning. He surely have stayed back home, however much he longed for it, or else he'd have left me behind dead in the halls. But let someone quickly call old man Dolios, my slave from that my father gave me. He keeps an orchard for me with many trees. Let him go and sit with Laertes and tell him all these things, that Laertes perhaps might weave some counsel in his breast, and weeping his lamentation go forth among these people who are planning to terminate his lineage and that of godlike Odysseus. The dear nurse Eurycleia responded, Dear lady, you may cut me down with a pitiless bronze, or let me go on living in the halls, but I shall not conceal my thoughts. I knew of these things and provided him with the articles for the journey that he commanded, bread and sweet wine. But he took from me also a great oath that I not inform you till the 12th day should arrive, unless you yourself did miss him and learn that he is gone, lest you mar your fair flesh with weeping. But let you take a bath now, and put pure raiment on your body, and go up to your upper chamber with your servant women, and pray to Athena, the maiden daughter of Zeus who holds the aegis, for she may protect him yet, even from death. And do not vex that terribly vexed old man, for I do not think that the lineage of the sons of Arcesios is utterly despised by the blessed gods. But there will be someone yet to maintain the high-roofed palace and the fertile fields far from town. So she spoke and put Penelope's sobbing to rest and stopped the tears from her eyes. Penelope took her bath and put fresh raiment on her body. and went up to her upper chamber with her servant women, and placing grains of barley in a basket, prayed to Athena, "Hear me, child of Zeus, who holds the aegis, unwearied one. If ever Odysseus, man of many devices, burnt rich thigh pieces or heifers and rams in sacrifice to you in the halls, remember these things for me now. Save my dear son, fend off the vicious wooers." So saying, she raised the sacred ululation, and the goddess heard her. But the wooers burst into the shady halls, and any one of the unruly youths might have spoken thus: "The queen with her many wooers is preparing our marriage, but she knows not a thing of the murder being prepared for her son." So might any one of them have spoken, but they knew not a thing of the actual preparations. Antinous addressed them. "O demoniac persons, cease this exorbitant chatter, lest someone report it within. Keep silence, but let us arise and accomplish the plan that seemed appropriate for us all." So speaking, he selected the men that seemed best, and they proceeded to the swift ship by the shore of the sea. They drew her into deep water and set her mast up and sail on the black ship, and fit the oars into leathern thole straps in an appropriate manner, and spread the white sail. And excited servants brought the men's weapons, and far out past safe haven they moored the ship and boarded her. Then they took their supper and waited for evening to come. Wise Penelope lay in her upper chamber without touching her bread, without partaking of drink or food, worrying whether her blameless son would flee death or be crushed by the vicious wooers. As a lion roils in terror, surrounded by a throng of men, as they draw their cunning circle in, so was she anxiously pondering. When sweet sleep came upon her, she fell back in slumber, all her joints loosed. And at that moment, the goddess, gray-eyed Athena, devised another tactic. She fashioned an image in the guise of a certain woman, Penelope's sister, Iphthime, daughter of great-hearted Icarios, whom Eumelus, his home is in Pherae, took to wife. Athena sent her to the palace of divine Odysseus amidst Penelope's grievous sobbing to ease her out of her tears and lamentations. The image passed into the chamber along the strap of the door bolt and stood above her head and spoke to her. "Do you sleep, O Penelope, with a broken heart? But the gods who live at ease would not have you weep thus in vexation. Your boy is yet to return, and he is in no way a transgressor in their eyes." Wise Penelope answered her then, as she slept particularly sweetly at the gates of dreams. "Why, sister, do you come here? It has never been your custom to visit, because you live far away. You tell me to cease my grieving and be done with the troubles that disturb me, heart and mind. Long ago I lost my noble lion-hearted husband. He was a cut apart among the Danaans in every kind of excellence, my noble husband, whose fame runs throughout all Hellas and through central Argos. And now the storm winds have blown away my most beloved boy out of the halls without a word. He is but a child, ignorant of toils and assemblies, and I am more anxious for him than for Odysseus. I fear and tremble for what might happen to him in the land where he travels, or out on the sea, for many hostile persons plot against him, wishing to kill him before he returns to his native country." The tenuous image responded, "Take courage, and do not be so fearful in your heart, for such a guide goes along with him as many others would wish to stand beside them. It is Pallas Athena, and she is fully adequate to the task. She pities you in her sorrow, and has sent me now to say these things to you." Wise Penelope said in her turn, "If you indeed are a god and have heard the voice of a god, do tell me also of that unhappy man, whether he yet lives and sees the light of the sun, or whether he is dead in the house of Hades." But the tenuous image responded, "I may not discourse plainly to you of that man, whether he lives or dies. It is idle to speak of that which is blowing in the wind." So saying, she slipped away through the door bolt hole onto the breath of the wind And the daughter of Icarius arose from her slumber, and her heart was warmed that a dream so vivid should have come out of murky night. And the wooers departed, sailing on the watery ways, meditating frankly the murder of Telemachus in their hearts. There is a certain rocky island in the middle of the water, twixt Ithaca and rugged Samos, Asteris. It is not very large, but has a double harbor safe for ships. There the Achaeans waited in ambush for him. Book 5. This is a translation by Herbert Jordan. Who would like to pick up here? Lizzie Krieger. No, you can stop whenever. We will find someone to pick up. Let's see how you like this one.
This is the one we were just reading.
We just finished 4, so 5 is...
Right, but this is the translation you were just reading.
No, we're reading Charles Stein.
Okay, so throw me into a brand new translation. That
Okay,
one.
so you have the flow.
Okay, book 5. Dawn, after sleeping by revered Tithonus, arose and brought her light to gods and men. The gods assembled, sitting. In their midst, far-thundering Zeus, the mightiest, reclined. Athena spoke about Odysseus' trials and her desire to free him from his captor. O Father Zeus, all deathless, blessed gods, never again should there exist a kindly sceptered monarch, nor one who has a just heart. Henceforth, let kings be harsh and work injustice, since none of you recalls the way Odysseus governed his folk as gently as a father. He suffers grievous pain upon an island, against his will, in nymph Calypso's caves. He has no means to reach his father's land. No ships are there, no oars, nor any crew who might convey him on the sea's broad back. Bad men are poised to kill his cherished son on his way home. He sought word of his sire in sacred Pylos, then in Lacedaemon. The cloud accumulator Zeus replied, "My child, what kind of speech flew past your teeth? Did you yourself not lay a plan before in which Odysseus takes revenge, returning? Escort Telemachus, you have the power, so he will reach his father's land unscathed, and let the suitors sail back empty-handed." He then addressed his dear son Hermes, saying, "Hermes, our messenger since times long past, inform the fair-tressed nymph. It is my will that stalwart, bold Odysseus sail home now, without escort, no god, no mortal man, but on a raft of logs, through more ordeals for 20 days, until he reaches Scheria, Phaeacians' land, a people like immortals. They will receive him as they would a god, and will transport him to his father's country, giving him vast amounts of gold and bronze, far more than he would have from Trojan spoils had his allotment made at home with him. His fate is by such means to see close kin, his father's land, and high-roofed halls built there." The Argus-slaying messenger obeyed. Beneath his feet he tied his marvelous sandals, eternal gold, which bore him over the waters and boundless lands as fast as breaths of wind. He grasped the wand that caused men's eyes to close, if that should be his wish, or else to open. With that in hand, the Argus slayer flew. At Pieria, he dropped from sky to sea and skimmed the waves as the mighty cormorant who, in the restless deeps, enormous troughs, dampens his wings with brine to capture fish. Like that bird, Hermes crossed the endless waves until he neared the island far away. He hastened from the purple sea to land so he could reach the cave in which the nymph resided, and indeed he found her there. Atop the hearth, a hot fire roared. Its scent of fragrant fine split cedar filled the aisle. The nymph Calypso sang, a lovely voice, and worked a golden shuttle in her loom. Around her cave, an ancient forest grew, black poplar, alder, cypress, sweet to smell. High in the trees were nests of long-winged birds, sea crows with slender beaks, horned owls and falcons, all birds who plied the sea and had no cares. Also about the hollow cave there stretched prolific vines from which grape clusters hung. A bank of 4 springs spouted brilliant water. Each of the 4 spouts flowed a different way. Nearby were meadows, celery, and violets. Any immortal god who reached that place would find himself entranced to see such beauty, as was the Argus slayer who stopped and stared. When Hermes finished drinking in the scene, he went inside the breezy cave where she, Calypso, goddess divine, acknowledged him. The gods are not unknown to one another, however far apart their homes may lie. But he did not find bold Odysseus there. The man patrolled the shore, as was his wont, his soul distressed amid the tears and groans of weeping while he gazed on restless seas. Brilliant goddess Calypso questioned Hermes after she offered him a glittering throne. Why, Hermes, do you come with your gold staff? I love and honor you, but you come seldom. Tell me your wish. My heart bids me comply if it is something I have power to do. Come, let me treat you as an honored guest. That said, the goddess placed him by a table, ambrosia filled, and mixed a ruby nectar. The Argus slaying courier ate and drank, but after dining to his heart's content, he spoke to her, responding to her question. Goddess, you asked me why I came to you, and since you asked me, I will speak the truth. Zeus sent me here, unwilling though I was, for who would want to cross the briny deep to where there is no town of mortal men or sacrifice of choicest hecatombs? But lesser gods can never nullify or skirt the will of aegis-keeping Zeus. He said you hold a man, most accursed of those who fought at Priam's citadel for 9 long years until in the 10th they sacked it. While they were sailing home, they vexed Athena, and she aroused storm winds and with towering waves, in which the man's devoted comrades died while wind-whipped swells conveyed him close to here. Now Zeus commands you set him free forthwith. His lot is not to perish far from loved ones. His fate is once again to see close kin, his father's land, and high-roofed halls built there. At those peremptory words, Calypso trembled, and when she found her voice, she said to him, "You gods are cruel and jealous most of all. You grudge the goddesses who bed a mortal and treat him like a husband openly. So it was when Dawn's fingers snatched Orion. You gods who live at ease denied her that, and on Ortygia, gold-throned Artemis shot him with gentle arrows, took his life. So it was when Demeter and Iasion united when her passion took control atop a thrice-plowed field. But when Zeus heard, he cast a silver thunderbolt and killed him. So now you gods grudge me my mortal man. I saved him, found him floating on a keel alone, because a dazzling thunderbolt from Zeus had split his ship in wine-hued seas. And with that strike, his trusty comrades died. In time, the wind and waves brought him to me. I loved the man. I nurtured him. I wished to make him ageless, deathless evermore. But now, since lesser gods can never thwart or skirt the will of aegis-keeping Zeus, the man may go, if Zeus has so ordained. But how is he to fare? I have no means. No ships are here, no oarsmen, no comrades, who might transport him back on the sea's broad back. But I will counsel him without deceit, that Zeus insists he should reach his land unscathed. The Argus-slaying courier said to her, "Send him away, avoid the wrath of Zeus, and Zeus will not hereafter punish you." That said, the Argus slayer took his leave. The regal nymph went promptly to Odysseus, for she would bow to Zeus's messenger. She found him yet upon the shore, his eyes still filled with bitter tears. His sweet life ebbed while he, tired of Calypso, yearned for home. He had no choice except to sleep with her, unwilling slave to her forceful will. But every day he sat beside the shore, and sorrow racked his heart. He groaned, he wept. He gazed at trackless seas as tears flowed on. The brilliant goddess stood by him and said, "Poor wretch, you will no longer have to suffer, pining away, for I will send you homeward. Come on, bring tools and cut stout logs to make a raft. Above the logs, construct a deck on which you may traverse the foggy seas. I will provide you food, water, and wine to ward off hunger, satisfy your belly, and clothes. Behind you I will send a breeze so you may reach your father's land unharmed. Since that is what the heaven dwellers wish, gods mightier than I, who have their way." Long-suffering divine Odysseus frowned before he spoke an answer back to her. "I fear you plan more than what you tell me now. Why do you bid me cross the sea by raft? That dangerous passage no seaworthy ship could make, despite a friendly Zeus-sent wind. I will not build or board the raft unless you, goddess, deign to swear a solemn oath that this is not a plan to bring me harm." Calypso, fair as any goddess, smiled, caressed his hand, and spoke assuringly. "You are no fool, but certainly a rebel to dare proclaim such brazen things to me. Let earth be witness, endless skies above, and Styx's buried stream, which is the strongest, most dreaded object blessed gods can swear on. For you, I never did or will plan harm. What I proposed, and still propose for you, I would perform myself should need arise. My mind is fair and just, nor is the heart inside my chest like iron, but merciful." Her oath complete, the brilliant goddess led. Odysseus followed, stepping in her footprints. Goddess and man soon reached her roomy cave, and he assumed the throne that Hermes left. The nymph prepared a cornucopia, the kinds of food and beverage mortals take. After she took a seat that faced Odysseus, her handmaids served nectar and ambrosia. The diners' hands reached out for savory treats. After the two enjoyed their food and drink, goddess Calypso was the first to speak. "Laertes' Zeus-descended son, Odysseus, are you determined now to travel home, regain your father's land? Do as you please, but if your mind could see what is in store, the trials you must endure while on your voyage, you would stay here with me, protect my caves, and be immortal. Quench desire to meet your lawful wife for whom you pine each day. I surely do not think she outshines me in comeliness. It is impossible for mortal face or shape to rival mine." The man of countless wiles replied to her, "Do not be angry, honored goddess. I know full well Penelope, compared with you, falls short by far in stature, shape, and beauty, for she is mortal. You will never age. Yet even so, through every day I long to live to see the day when I return, and if the gods afflict me while I sail, I will endure, maintain a hardy spirit. Already I have made it through ordeals on waves in war. Let the new ones have their day." At that, the sun went down and darkness fell. The two sought out the hollow cave's far reaches, where they stayed the night in love's enchantment. When dawn ignited day with coral hands, Odysseus quickly dressed in cloak and tunic. Calypso chose a long white robe to wear, fine spun. She tightened around her waist a belt of gold and fastened on her hair a veil. She then procured the tools to build a raft. She handed him a double-bitted axe, 2 sharpened edges, bronze, its head atop a solid olive haft, a perfect fit. She gave him 2 and adze, then led the way to the forest, to where the forest trees grew tall and straight, black alder, poplar, firs that brushed the sky, dead long ago and cured to float with ease. After she showed him where the long trunks stood, Calypso, gorgeous goddess, went back home and left him cutting logs, which he soon finished. 20 he felled, then used the adze to shape and nearly smoothed them till they were aligned. Meantime, the goddess carried back an auger. He drilled the logs and fastened them together with pegs until he had a solid slab. When a man lays out a vessel's hull, a ship made broad of beam, As broad as that, Odysseus made his raft. He put in place a deck securely braced and raised around the edge gunwale walls. He made a mast, a yard to hang a sail, and fashioned next a helm to steer the craft. He tucked green willow strips in every crack to seal out waves, and backed the strips with pitch. While he was building, she produced stout canvas to make a sail, which he created neatly. He rigged it, foot and yard, with sheets and halyards. That done, he launched his raft in shallow water. Within 4 days, his project was complete, and on the 5th, Calypso let him go. But first she bathed him, gave him fragrant clothes. Aboard, she placed a skin of mellow wine, an even larger water skin, and food, a knapsack filled with meats of every sort. She summoned up a warm and gentle breeze. Odysseus raised his sail to catch the wind and took the helm to deftly steer his craft. He sat astern, and sleep bypassed his eyes while he admired the Pleiades, Boötes, and Bear, stars other people call the wagon, which always turns so that it can watch Orion and is alone, denied a bath in ocean. Goddess Calypso had advised the man to steer so as to keep the bear leftward. 17 days he sailed across the sea, and on the 18th he saw shady mountains, Phaeacian's land, which he was drawing near. The land lay on the sea as might a shield.
So where do I stop?
When you feel like it.
Okay. This will do. Okay. So Poseidon, on his way from Ethiopia, looked out from Slomia peaks and saw Odysseus sailing his course. Poseidon's heart grew angry, and he addressed himself, shaking his head. The other gods must have conspired to aid Odysseus while I was away. He nears Phoenician's land, where he is fated, if he arrives, to be set free of his trials, but I intend to make him suffer more. That said, he gathered clouds and stirred the sea. He grasped his trident, summoned the whirling winds from every point. He used the clouds to hide the land, the sea as well. He brought on night. Gales from the south meant howling zephyrs, and Boreas blew from either, raised huge waves. Odysseus's heart and knees began to flag. He spoke a word to his intrepid soul. "O wretched man, what will become of me? I fear that what the goddess said was true. Before I cross the sea and reach my shores, woes will engulf me." So it happens now, as Zeus erects these clouds across the sky, spurs whirlwinds on, and negates the deep. Now doom for me is surely close at hand. Thrice blessed or more were those Argives who fell while serving Atreus' son far off in Troy. If only I had met my fate and died when Trojans hurled so many spears at me around the corpse of Peleus' fallen son. Greeks would have buried me and spread my fame, but now my lot is ignominious death. And he said that as he said this, a monstrous wave crashed down. It struck the raft and spun it like a top, wrestled the helm he held, and cast him helpless over the side. His tall mast snapped in half beneath the full assault of the whirling winds. His sail and yardarm toppled leagues away. He stayed submerged and could not draw breath or breast and float atop the giant waves. The closed Calypso gave him, weighed him down. At length he made the surface spitting brine, which drained from every recess in his head. That's horrible. Though nearly spent, he did not lose his raft. He plunged through waves to where it bobbed and he grasped it. Then sat amid the logs and cheated death. Great waves propelled his raft this way and that. as when late summer winds drive thistledown across a plain, dense clouds of silky seeds. So then winds tossed the raft, now here, now there. At times the south winds cast it to the north, at times the east winds drove it to the west. Slim-ankled Iono noticed Cadmus's daughter, renamed Leucothea, when, though once a mortal, she came to be a goddess of high seas. She pitied Odysseus's mounting hardships. She rose above the waves as might a seabird, sat on a raft and spoke a word to him. Poor wretched man, why is the tremor maker raging at you, devising endless trials? Though furious, he does not elect to kill you. You do not seem a fool. Take my advice. Remove your clothes and give the winds your raft. Use mighty arms to swim until you reach Phaeacian's land, where fate will set you free. Here, tie this charmed headband around your chest. With this, you will need not fear more trials or death. But when at length your fingers touch the shore, untie and throw the band in wine-hued waters with all your might, and look the other way. That said, the goddess handed him her band and dived again beneath the rolling swells as might a cormorant. The waves concealed her. Long-suffering, divine Odysseus worried as he addressed his own intrepid heart. Ah, me, what trap has one of them set now? A god who says I should forsake my raft. No, I will not. That land is distant still, the land where she said I would find release. I will adopt another, a better plan. As long as my raft's timbers stay intact, I will remain aboard it, come what may. But if a wave should smash my raft to bits, then I will swim for lack of a better choice. When he, Odysseus, pondered what to do, Poseidon roused a giant curling wave, a frightful swell, and drove it on the man. And when fierce winds assailed a heap of chaff, dry chaff, till dust is scattered everywhere, so did the ropes and timbers fly. Odysseus straddled a log as might a racehorse rider. He stripped away his clothes Calypso gave him, fastened the goddess's headband around his chest, and drove into the brine with his arms outstretched, eager to swim. The tremor maker watched and shook his head while saying to himself, now let him roam the seas, find tribulations until he makes his way to Zeus-bred mortals. He will never forget the woes that I gave him. Having said that, he lashed his flax-maned team and soon reached Aegea, where his palace stood. Athena, Zeus's daughter, also planned. She blocked the paths of every wind but one. She bade them settle down and go to sleep, except the north, for whom she cleaved the waves. So Zeus begat Odysseus, might soon reach the rowing fond Phoenicians, dodging death. 2 days and nights, gigantic troughs and swells assailed the man until his heart despaired. But when dawn's golden tresses lit a third day, the wind abated, left the water's face in breathless calm. He then made out dry land, straining his eyes atop the highest billow. And when young children see their father lives, after he suffered helpless, gravely ill, oppressed a long time under evil spells, till heaven finally set him free from sickness, so did Odysseus welcome sight of shore. He struck out swimming, keen to step on earth, but when he neared the land in shouting distance, he heard the roar of reefs and seas ahead, where massive waves redoubled toward the coast, bellowed and boomed, made water turn to foam. There was no place where ships might rest, no harbor, only a rocky coastline, reefs and cliffs. At that, Odysseus's knees and heart went limp, and he addressed his valiant soul, discouraged. Ah me, Zeus, grant that I've seen land. Exceeding hopes, I held on endless seas, but not that I set foot there. Leave the water. Ahead lie jagged rocks beset by waves that surge and crash. Above, sheer cliffs arise at water's edge. There is no place for foot to hold, and let me climb to my escape. I dare not head toward the stony cliffs, lest huge waves seize me, make my struggle futile. But should I swim on down the coast to find a sloping shore or calm, protected bay, I fear a storm may once again snatch me up, return me to the trackless deep again, or else a god may loose a monster on me, that kind that Amphitrite rears in droves. How well I know Poseidon seeks my torment. While he was brooding, wondering what to do, a monstrous wave propelled him towards the coast, towards a lacerated skin and broken bones. But for a thought bright-eyed Athena sent him. The wave propelled him to a monolith. He grabbed it tight until the wave passed by and thus survived. But as the same wave ebbed, it broke his hold and drove him far offshore. When from its lair an octopus is dragged, its suckers cling and tear packed pebbles loose. Thus did the sharp rock rip Odysseus' skin, bloody his sturdy hands. The wave engulfed him. He would have surely died, defying fate, had not Athena sent another thought. He drove beyond the waves that broke near shore and swam beside them, eyes on land to seek an inlet, else a place where sand sloped up. But when he saw a flowing river's mouth, it seemed to him to be the ideal place, wind-sheltered smooth, and not a rock in sight. He saw the river's holy streams and prayed, "Do hear me, Lord, whoever you may be. I flee the wrath Poseidon's sea has dealt. Immortal gods will often show respect to mortal men who wander as I have. From countless trials I reach your streams, your knees. Take pity, Lord, your supplicant entreats." The deity paused his flow. He blocked the waves, created calm before him, saved the man within his mouth. Odysseus' knees went limp, his arms collapsed. The sea had crushed his spirit. His limbs were swollen, pent-up water oozed from mouth and nostril. Breathless, silently he lay, almost unconscious, vigor gone. In time he came around, regained his wits. He loosened the goddess's headband around his chest and dropped it in the river's brackish mouth. A billow bore it down the streams to Ino, and she retrieved it. He then left the river, bent down in rushes, kissed the fruitful earth, and once again addressed his valiant soul. "What will befall me now? Where will it end? If I should pass the night beside the river, might not the icy dew, the biting frost, defeat my feeble heart, worn as it is, toward morning, when the coldest breezes blow? Yet if I climb the slope to shady woods and hide in thickets there, I might be safe from cold. But when I drowse or sleep arrives, I fear I may become a wild beast's prey." At length he chose the latter course. He searched for trees and found a grove near water, a hillock, where he crawled beneath two shrubs that intertwined, an olive meshed with thorn. No chill, damp winds could penetrate the corpse, nor could the sun's bright rays infiltrate there, nor could the rains seep in so tight, so interweaved the brushes grew. He crept beneath with his hands scooped out of bed. He gathered fallen leaves that lay about, enough to shield a pair of men or three from winter's cold, no matter how severe. Fatigued, Odysseus smiled. Pleased with his work, he lay down there and heaped on still more leaves, as when a man banks ashes over coals, an isolated man who has no neighbors, to keep fire, lest he might start a new one. So did Odysseus hide in leaves. Athena sprinkled his eyes with sleep to bring an end to weariness, and soon his eyelids closed.
Readers, come on down. Nice expression. Thank you. Just hold out for you. James, is it open to see the morning? It is. It's actually the next one. Oh, you finished? Oh, awesome. So it's spring.
Let's see what this translation is. He said it was 6:6. So, all right, Vegas. You see yourself in there?
Yeah.
That's what the world sees.
Great. Okay. So, Book 6, The Princess and the Stranger. So there he lay at rest, the storm-tossed great Odysseus, borne down by his hard labors first, and now deep sleep as Athena traveled through the countryside and reached the Phaeacian city. Years ago, they lived in a land of spacious dancing circles, Hyperia, all too close to the overbearing Cyclops, stronger, violent brutes who harried them without end. So their godlike king, Nausinous, led the people off in a vast migration, settled them in Scheria, far from the men who toil on this earth. He flung up walls around the city, built the houses, raised the gods' temples, and shared the land for plowing. But his fate had long since forced him down to death, and now Alcinous ruled, and the gods made him wise. Straight to his house the clear-eyed Pallas went, full of plans for great Odysseus' journey home. She made her way to the gaily painted room where a young girl lay asleep, a match for the deathless gods in build and beauty, Nausicaa, the daughter of generous King Alcinous. 2 handmaids, fair as the Graces, slept beside her, flanking the 2 posts, with the gleaming doors closed. But the goddess drifted through like a breath of fresh air, rushed to the girl's bed, and hovering close she spoke, in face and form like the shipman Dymas' daughter, a girl the princess's age, and dearest to her heart. Disguised, the bright-eyed goddess chided Nausicaa, "How could your mother bear a careless girl like you? Look at your fine clothes, lying here neglected, with your marriage not far off. The day you should be decked in all your glory and offer elegant dress to those who form your escort. That's how a bride's good name goes out across the world, and it brings her father and queenly mother joy. Come, let's go wash these clothes at the break of day. I'll help you, lend a hand, and the work will fly. You won't stay unwed long. The noblest men in the country court you now, all Phaeacians just like you, Phaeacia born and raised. So come, the first thing in the morning, press your kingly father to harness the mules and wagon for you, all to carry your sashes, dresses, glossy spreads for your bed. It's so much nicer for you to ride than go on foot. The washing pools are just too far from town." With that, the bright-eyed goddess sped away to Olympus, where, they say, the god's eternal mansion stands unmoved, never rocked by gale winds, never drenched by rains, nor do the drifting snows assail it. No, the clear air stretches away without a cloud, and a great radiance plays across that world where the lithe gods live all their days in bliss. There Athena went, once the bright-eyed one had urged the princess on. Dawn soon rose on her splendid throne and woke Nausicaa finely gowned. Still beguiled by her dream, down she went through the house to tell her parents now, her beloved father and mother. She found them both inside. Her mother sat at the hearth with several waiting women, spinning yarn on a spindle, lustrous sea blue wool. Her father she met as he left to join the lords at a council island nobles asked him to attend. She stepped up close to him, confiding, "Daddy, dear, I wonder, won't you have them harness a wagon for me, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, so I can take our clothes to the river for a washing? Lovely things, but lying before me all soiled. And you yourself, sitting among the princes, debating points at your council, you really should be wearing spotless linen. Then you have 5 sons, full grown in the palace, 2 of them married, but 3 are lusty bachelors, always demanding crisp shirts fresh from the wash when they go out to dance. Look at my duties, that all rests on me." So she coaxed, too shy to touch on her hopes for marriage, young warm hopes, in her father's presence. But he saw through it all and answered quickly, "I won't deny you the mules, my darling girl. I won't deny you anything. Off you go, and the men will harness a wagon, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, fitted out with a cradle on the top." With that he called to the stablemen, and they complied. They trundled the wagon out now, rolling smoothly, backed the mule team into the traces, hitched them up, while the princess brought her finery from the room and piled it into the wagon's polished cradle. Her mother packed a hamper, treats of all kinds, favorite things to refresh her daughter's spirits, poured wine in the skin, and as Nausicaa climbed aboard, the queen gave her a golden flask of suppling olive oil for her and her maids to smooth on after bathing. Then, taking the whip in hand and glistening reins, she touched the mules to a start, and out they clattered, trotting on at a clip, bearing the princess in her clothes, and not alone. Her maids went with her, stepping briskly too. Once they reached the banks of the river flowing strong, where the pools would never fail, with plenty of water, cool and clear, bubbling up and rushing through to scour the darkest stains, they loosed the mules out from under the wagon yoke and chased them down the river's rippling banks to graze on luscious clover. They closed by the armload, plunged them into the dark pools and stamped them down in the hollows, one girl racing the next to finish first until they'd scoured and rinsed off all the grime. Then they spread them out in a line along the beach where the surf had washed a pebbly scree ashore. And once they'd bathed and smoothed their skin with oil, they took their picnic, sitting along the river's banks and waiting for all the clothes to dry in the hot noon sun. Now fed to their heart's content, the princess and her retinue threw their veils to the wind, struck up a game of ball. White-armed Nausicaa led their singing, dancing beat, as lithe as Artemis with her arrows striding down from a high peak. Tagetes' towering ridge or Eurymathus thrilled to race with the wild boar or bounding deer, and nymphs of the hills race with her, daughters of Zeus whose shield is storm and thunder, ranging the hills in sport. And Leto's heart exults as head and shoulders over the rest her daughter rises, unmistakable. She outshines them all, though all are lovely. So Nausicaa shone among her maids, a virgin still unwed. But now, as she was about to fold her clothes and yoke the mules and turn her for home again, now clear-eyed Pallas thought of what came next, to make Odysseus wake and see this young beauty, and she would lead him to the Phaeacians' town. The ball, the princess suddenly tossed it to a maid, but it missed the girl. It splashed in a deep swirling pool, and they all shouted out. And that woke great Odysseus. He sat up with a start, puzzling, his heart pounding. Man of misery, whose land have I lit on now? What are they here, violent, savage, lawless, or friendly to strangers, God-fearing men? Listen, shouting, echoing round me, women, girls, or the nymphs who haunt the rugged mountaintops and the river springs and meadows lush with grass. Or am I really close to people who speak my language? Up with you, see how the land lies, see for yourself now. Muttering so, great Odysseus crept out of the bushes, stripping off with his massive hand a leafy branch from the tangled olive growth to shield his body, hide his private parts. And out he stalked as a mountain lion, exultant in his power, strides through wind and rain, and his eyes blaze, and he charges sheep or oxen, or chases wild deer, but his hunger drives him on to go for flocks, even to raid the best defended homestead. So Odysseus moved out, about to mingle with all those lovely girls, naked now as he was, for the need drove him on, a terrible sight, all crusted, caked with brine. They scattered in panic down the jutting beaches. Only Achinas' daughter held fast, for Athena planted courage within her heart, dissolving the trembling in her limbs, and she firmly stood her ground and faced Odysseus, torn now. Should he fling his arms around her knees, the young beauty, plead for help, or stand back? Plead with a winning word, beg her to lead him to the town and lend him clothing? This was the better way, he thought. Plead now with a subtle winning word and stand well back. Don't clasp her knees, the girl might bridle, yes. He launched in at once, endearing, sly and suave. Here I am at your mercy, princess. Are you a goddess or a mortal? If one of the gods who rule the skies up there, you're Artemis to the life, the daughter of mighty Zeus. I see her now. Just look at your build, your bearing, your lithe, flowing grace. But if you're one of the mortals living here on earth, 3 times blessed are your father, your queenly mother, 3 times over your brothers too. How often their hearts must warm with joy to see you, striding into the dances, such a bloom of beauty. True, but he is the one more blessed than all other men alive, that man who sways you with gifts and leads you home, his bride. I have never laid eyes on anyone like you, neither man nor woman. I look at you and a sense of wonder takes me. Wait, once I saw the like, in Delos, beside Apollo's altar, the young slip of a palm tree springing into the light. There I had sailed, you see, with a great army in my wake, out on a long campaign that doomed my life to hardship. That vision, just as I stood there gazing, rapt for hours. No shaft like that had ever risen up from the earth. So now I marvel at you, my lady, rapt, enthralled, too struck with awe to grasp you by the knees, though pain has ground me down. Only yesterday, the 20th day, did I escape the wine-dark sea. Till then, the waves and the rushing gales had swept me on from the island of Ogygia. Now some power has tossed me here, doubtless to suffer still more torments on your shores. I can't believe they'll stop. Long before that, the gods will give me more, still more. Compassion, princess, please. You, after all that I've suffered, you are the first I've come to. I know no one else, none in your city, no one in your land. Show me the way to town. Give me a rag for cover, just some cloth, some wrapper you carried with you here. And may the good gods give you all your heart desires, husband and house, and lasting harmony too. No finer, greater gift in the world than that. When man and woman possess their home, 2 minds, 2 hearts that work as one. Despair to their enemies, a joy to all their friends, their own best claim to glory. Stranger, the white-armed princess answered staunchly. Friend, you're hardly a wicked man, and no fool, I'd say. It's Olympian Zeus himself who hands our fortunes out, to each of us in turn, to the good and bad, however Zeus prefers. He gave you pain, it seems. You simply have to bear it. But now, seeing you've reached our city and our land, you'll never lack for clothing or any other gift. The right of worn-out suppliants come our way. I'll show you our town, tell you our people's name. Phaeacians we are, who hold this city and this land. And I am the daughter of generous King Alcinous. All our people's power stems from him. She called out to her girls with lovely braids, "Stop, my friends. Why run when you see a man? Surely you don't think him an enemy, do you? There's no one alive, there never will be one, who'd reach Phaeacian soil and lay it waste. The immortals love us far too much for that. We live too far apart, out in the surging sea, off at the world's end. No other mortals come to mingle with us. But here's an unlucky wanderer strayed our way, and we must tend him well. Every stranger and beggar comes from Zeus, and whatever scrap we give him, he'll be glad to get. So quick, my girls, give our newfound friend some food and drink and bathe the man in the river, wherever you find some shelter from the wind." At that, they came to a halt and teased each other on and led Odysseus down to a sheltered spot where he could find a seat, just as great Alcinous' daughter told them. They laid out cloak and shirt for him to wear. They gave him the golden flask of suppling olive oil and pressed him to bathe himself in the river's stream. Then thoughtful Odysseus reassured the handmaids, "Stand where you are, dear girls, a good way off, so I can rinse the brine from my shoulders now and rub myself with oil. How long it's been since oil touched my skin. But I won't bathe in front of you. I would be embarrassed. Stark naked before young girls with lovely braids." The handmaids scurried off to tell their mistress. Great Odysseus bathed in the river, scrubbed his body clean of brine that clung to his back and broad shoulders, scoured away the brackish scurf that caked his head. And then, once he had bathed all over, rubbed in oil and donned the clothes the virgin princess gave him, Zeus's daughter Athena made him taller to all eyes, his build more massive now, and down from his brow she ran his curls like thick hyacinth clusters full of blooms. As a master craftsman washes gold over beaten silver, a man the god of fire and Queen Athena trained in every fine technique, and finishes off his latest effort, handsome work, so she lavished splendor over his head and shoulders now. And down to the beach he walked and sat apart, glistening in his glory, breathtaking, yes, and the princess gazed in wonder, then turned to her maids with lovely braided hair. "Listen, my white-armed girls, to what I tell you. The gods of Olympus can't be all against this man who's come to mingle among our noble people. At first he seemed appalling, I must say. Now he seems like a god who rules the skies up there. Ah, if only a man like that were called my husband, lived right here, pleased to stay forever. Enough, give the stranger food and drink, my girls." They hung on her words and did her will at once, set before Odysseus food and drink, and he ate and drank, the great Odysseus, long deprived, so ravenous now, it seemed like years since he had tasted food. The white-armed princess thought of one last thing. Folding the clothes, she packed them into her painted wagon, hitched the sharp-hoofed mules, and climbing up herself, Nausicaa urged Odysseus, warmly urged her guest, "Up with you now, my friend, and off to town we go. I'll see you into my wise father's palace, where I promise you you'll meet all the best Phaeacians. Wait, let's do it this way. You seem no fool to me. While we're passing along the fields and plowlands, you follow the mules and wagon, stepping briskly with all my maids. I'll lead the way myself. But once we reach our city, ringed by walls and strong high towers too, with a fine harbor either side, and the causeway in is narrow, along the road the rolling ships are all hauled up, with a slipway cleared for every vessel. There's our assembly, round Poseidon's royal precinct, built of quarried slabs planted deep in the earth. Here the sailors tend their black ships' tackle, cables, and sails, and plane their oar blades down. Phaeacians, you see, care nothing for bow or quiver, only for masts and oars and good trim ships themselves. We glory in our ships, crossing the foaming seas. But I shrink from all our sea dogs' nasty gossip. Some old salt might mock us behind our backs. We have our share of insolent types in town, and one of the coarser sort, spying us, might say, "Now who's that tall, handsome stranger Nausicaa has in tow? Where'd she light on him? Her husband-to-be, just wait." But who? Some shipwrecked stray she's taken up with? Some alien from abroad? Since nobody lives nearby. Unless it's really a god come down from the blue to answer all her prayers and to have her all his days. Good riddance. Let the girl go roving to find herself a man from foreign parts. She only spurns her own. Countless Phaeacians round about who court her, nothing but our best. So they'll scoff. Just think of the scandal that would face me then. I'd find fault with a girl who carried on that way, flouting her parents' wishes, father, mother, still alive, consorting with men before she tied the knot in public. No, stranger, listen closely to what I say, the sooner to win your swift voyage home at my father's hands. Now you'll find a splendid grove along the road, poplars, sacred to Pallas, a bubbling springs inside and meadows run around it. There lies my father's estate, his blossoming orchard too, as far from town as a man's strong shout can carry. Take a seat there, wait a while, and give us time to make it into town and reach my father's house. Then, when you think you are home, walk on yourself to the city. Ask the way to my father's palace, generous King Alcinous. You cannot miss it. Even an innocent child could guide you there. No other Phaeacian's house is built like that. So grand, the palace of Alcinous, our great hero. Once the mansion and courtyard have enclosed you, go quickly across the hall until you reach my mother. Beside the hearth she sits in the fire's glare, spinning yarn on a spindle, sea blue wool, a stirring sight, you'll see. She leans against a pillar, her ladies sit behind, and my father's throne is drawn up close beside her. There he sits and takes his wine, immortal like a god. Go past him, grasp my mother's knees. If you want to see the day of your return, rejoicing soon, even if your home's a world away. If only the queen will take you to her heart, then there's hope that you will see your loved ones, reach your own grand house, your native land at last. At that, she touched the mules with her shining whip, and they quickly left the running stream behind. The team trotted on, their hooves wove in and out. She drove them back with care so all the rest, maids and Odysseus, could keep the pace on foot, and she used the whip discreetly. The sun sank as they reached the hallowed grove, sacred to Athena, where Odysseus stopped and sat and said a prayer at once to mighty Zeus's daughter. Hear me, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is thunder, tireless one, Athena. Now hear my prayer at last, for you never heard me then, when I was shattered, when the famous god of earthquakes wrecked my craft. Grant that here among the Phaeacian people I may find some mercy and some love. So he prayed, and Athena heard his prayer, but would not yet appear to him undisguised. She stood in awe of her father's brother, lord of the sea, who still seethed on, still churning with rage against the great Odysseus, till he reached his native land.
All right, we're in book 7 right now. As Lord Odysseus prayed there in the grove, the girl rode on, behind her strapping team, and came late to the mansion of her father, where she reined in at the courtyard gate. Her brothers awaited her like tall gods in the court, circling to lead the mules away and carry the laundered things inside. But she withdrew to her own bedroom, where a fire soon shone, kindled by her nurse, Epimusia. Years ago, from a raid on the continent, the rolling ships had brought this woman over to be Alcinous' share, fit spoil for him whose realm hung on his world as a god's. And she had schooled the princess Nausicaa, whose fire she tended now, making her supper. Odysseus, when the time had passed, arose and turned into the city, but Athena poured a sea fog around him, and as he went, her love expedient that no jeering sailor should halt to the man or challenge him for luck. Instead, as he set foot into the pleasant city, the gray-eyed goddess came to him in figure, a small girl child hugging a water jug. Confronted by her, Lord Odysseus asked, "Little one, could you take me to the house of that Alcinous, king among those people? You see, I am a poor old stranger here. My home is far away. Here there is no one known to me in courtside or city." The gray-eyed goddess Athena replied to him, "Oh yes, good grandfer, sir. I know. I'll show you the house you mean. It is quite near to my father's. But come now, hush like this and follow me. You must not stare at people or be inquisitive. They do not care for strangers in this neighborhood. A foreign man will not get welcome here. The only things they trust are the racing ships Poseidon gave, to sail the deep blue sea like white wings in the sky, or a flashing thought." Pallas Athena turned like the wind running ahead of him, and he followed in her footsteps. And no seafaring man of Pachina perceived Odysseus passing through their town. The awesome one in pigtails bared their sight with folds of sacred mist. And yet Odysseus gazed out, marveling at the ships and harbors, public squares and ramparts towering up with pointed palisades among the top. When they were near the mansion of the king, gray-eyed Athena and the child cried out, "Here it is, grandfer, sir, the mansion house you asked to see. You'll find our king and queen at supper, but you must not be dismayed. Go in to them. A cheerful man does best in every enterprise, even a stranger. You'll see Our Lady just inside the hall. Her name is Arete. Her grandfather was our good king Echinos's father, Nausithius by name, son of Poseidon and Priaba. That was a good beauty, the daughter of Euaemon, commander of Giantis in the old days, who led those wild things to their doom and his. Poseidon then made love to Priaba, and she bore Nausibus, Pica's lord, whose son were in turn Rexitor and Elicos. Rexinor had no sons, even as a bridegroom. He fell before the silver bow of Apollo, his only child, a daughter, Arete. When she grew up, Aquinos married her and holds her dear. No lady in the world, no matter mistress or of a man's household, is honored as our mistresses and loved by her own child, by Aquinos, and by the people. When she walks the town, they murmur and gaze as though she were a goddess. No grace or wisdom fails in her. Indeed, just men in quarrels come to her for equity. Supposing then she looks upon you kindly, the chances are that you shall see your friends under your own roof in my father's country. At this, the gray-eyed goddess Athena left him and left that comely land, going over sea to Marathon, to the wide roadways of Athens and her retreat in the stronghold of Eurystheus. Odysseus, now alone before the palace, meditated a long time before crossing the brazen thresholds of the great courtyard. High rooms he saw ahead, airy and luminous, as though with lusters of the sun and moon, bronze-paneled walls at several distances making a vista with an azure molding of lapis lazuli. The doors were golden guardians of the great room. Shining bronze plated the wide door still. The post and lintel were silver upon silver. Golden handles curved on the doors, and golden too and silver were sculpted hounds flanking the entranceways, cast by the skill and ardor of Hephaestus to guard the Prince Aquinos' house, undying dogs that never grow old. Through all the rooms, as far as he could see, tall chairs were placed around the walls and strewn with fine embroidered stuff made by the woman. Here were enthralled the leaders of Palkia, drinking and dining with abundant fare. Here too were boys of gold on pedestals, holding aloft bright torches of pitch pine to light the great rooms and the nighttime feasting. And 50 maids in waiting of the household sat by the round mill, grinding yellow corn, or wove upon their looms, or twilted their distaffs, flickering like leaves of a poplar tree, when drops of oil glistened on linen weft. Skillful as were the men of Palkia in ships handling at sea, were so these women skilled in the loom, having this lovely craft of artistry as talents from Athena. To left and right outside, he saw an orchard closed by a pale, 4 spacious acres planted with trees in bloom or weighted down for picking, pear trees, pomegranates, brilliant apples, luscious figs, and olives ripened dark. Fruit never failed on these trees. Winter and summertime they bore, for through the year the breathing west wind ripened all in turn. So one pear came to prime, and then another, and so with apples, figs, and the vine's fruit empurpled in Royal's vineyards there. Currants were dried at one end on a platform bare to the sun. Beyond the vintages, arbors, and vats the vintners trod, while near at hand were new grapes barely formed as the green bloom fell, or half-ripe clusters faintly coloring. After the vines came rows of vegetables of all the kinds that flourish in every season, and through the garden plots and orchards ran channels from one clear fountain, while another gushed through a pipe under the courtyard entrance to serve the house and all who came for water. These were the gifts of heaven to Alkinos. Odysseus, who had borne the barren sea, stood in the gateway and surveyed this bounty. He gazed his fill, and swiftly he went in. The lords and nobles of Phakia were tipping wine to the wakeful god, to Hermes, a last libation before going to bed. But down the hall Odysseus went unseen. Still in the cloud Athena cloaked him in until he reached Arete and the king. He threw his great hands round Arete's knees, whereon the sacred mists curled back. They saw him, and the diners hushed amazed to see an unknown man inside the palace. Under their eyes, Odysseus made his pleas. Arete, admirable Rhexena's daughter, here is a man bruised by adversity, thrown upon your mercy and the king, your husband's, begging indulgence for this company. May the gods' blessing rest on them. May life be kind to all. Let each one leave his children every good thing this realm confers upon him. But grant me passage to my fatherland. My home and my friends lie far. My life is pain. He moved then toward the fire and sat down amid the ashes. No one stirred or spoke until Echinos broke the spell, an old man, eldest of the Phlycians, an oracle versed in the laws and manners of old time. He rose among them now and spoke out kindly. Alkinos, this will not pass for courtesy, a guest abashed in ashes at our hearth. Everyone here awaits your word, so come then, lift the man up, give him a seat of honor, a silver-studded chair. Then tell the stewards we have another wine bowl of light for libation to Zeus, Lord of the lightning, advocate of honorable petitioners, and supper may be supplied to our friend by the mistresses. Alkinos, calm in power, heard him out, then took the great adventurer by the hand and led him from the fire. Nearest his throne, the son he loved best, Laodamas, had long held place. Now the king bade him rise and gave him a shining chair to Lord Odysseus. A serving maid poured water from his hands, from a gold pitcher into a silver bowl, and spread a polished table at his side. And the mistress of provisions came with bread and other victuals, generous with her store. So Lord Odysseus drank and tasted supper. Seeing this done, the king in majesty said to his squire, a fresh bowl, Panotos, make libation to the Lord of lightning, who second honorable petitioners. Mixing the honey-hearted wine, Potinos went on his rounds and poured fresh cups for all, whereof when all they had split, they drank their fill. Aquinos spoke to the company. My lords and leaders of Placina, hear now all that my heart would have me say. Our banquet's ended, so you may retire. But let our seniors gather in the morning to give this guest a feastal day and make fair offerings to the gods. In due course, we shall put our minds upon the means at hand to take him safely, comfortably, well and happily, with speed to his own country, distant though it may lie, and no trouble come to him or on the way. His fate shall pay out at home, even as the spinner spun for him on the day his mother bore him. If as may be, he is some god come down from heaven's height, the gods are working strangely. Until now, they have shown themselves in glory only after great hecatombs, those figures banqueting at the sides, throned like ourselves. Or if some traveler met them alone, they bore no least disguise. We are their kin, rank no nearer to the gods than we. Odysseus' wits were ready, and he replied, Alkinos, you may set your mind at rest. Body and birth, a most unlikely god am I, being all of earth and mortal nature. I should say, rather, I am like those men who suffer the worst trials that you know, and miseries greater yet, as I might tell you. Hundreds, indeed, the gods could send no more. Would you indulge me if I finish dinner? Grieved though I may say it, there is no part of man more like a dog than brazen belly, crying to be remembered, and it must be when you are mortal weary and sick at heart. And that is my condition. Yet my hunger drives me to take this food and think no more of my afflictions. Belly must be filled. Be equally implied, my lords, tomorrow to berth me in a ship and send me home. Rough years I had, and now I see once more my hands, my lands, my people, before I die. Now all who cried out assent to this. The guest had spoke well. He must have a passage home.
Then tipping wine, they drank their thirst away, and one by one went homeward for the night. So Lord Odysseus kept his place alone with Arete and the king Alcinous besides him. And when the maids went to and fro, clearing the wine cups from the table, presently the ivory-skinned lady turned to him, for she knew his cloak and tunic to be her own fine work, done with her maids, and Arete came upon words upon the air. Friend, I for one have certain questions for you. Who are you, and who has given you this clothing? Did you not say you wandered here by sea? The great tactician carefully replied, Ah, Majesty, what labor it would be to go through the whole story, and my years of misadventures given by those on high. But this you ask is quickly told. In the mid-ocean lies Ogygia, the island haunt of Calypso, Atlas's guileful daughter, a lovely goddess and a dangerous one. No one, no god or man, consorts with her, but supernatural power brought me there to be her solitary guest. For Zeus let fly his bright bolt and split my ship, rolling me over in wine-dark sea. There are my shipmates, friends were drowned, while I hung on the keel board of the wreck and drifted 9 full days. Then in the dead of night, the gods brought me ashore to Ogygia into her hands. The enchantress in her beauty fed and caressed me, promised me I should be immortal, youthful, all the days to come. But in my heart, I never gave consent, through 7 years detained. Immortal clothing I had from her, and it kept wet with tears. Then came the 8th year on the wheel of heaven, and word to her from Zeus, or a change of heart, so that she may now command me to sail, sending me out to the sea on a craft I made with timber and tools of hers. She gave me stores, victuals and wine, a cloak divinely woven, and made a warm land breeze come astern. 17 days I sailed in the open water before I saw your country shore, a shadow upon the sea rim. Then my heart rejoiced, pitiable as I am, for blows of plenty awaited me from the God who shakes the earth. Cross gales he blew, making me lose my bearings, and heaved up seas beyond imagination, huge and foundering seas. All I could do was hold hard, groaning under every shock, until my craft broke up in the hurricane. I kept afloat and swam your sea, or drifted, taken by wind and current to this coast, where I went in on this big swells running landward. But cliffs and rock shoal made that place forbidding, and I turned back, swimming offshore, and came in the end to a river, to auspicious water, where smooth beach and rise that broke in the wind. I lay there where I fell till strength returned. Then sacred night came on, and I went inland to high ground and a leaf bed in a thicket. Heaven sent slumber in endless tide, submerging my sad heart among the leaves. That night and next day's dawn and noon I slept. The sun went west, and then sweat slept upon me, and I became aware of maids, your daughters, playing among the beach, the princess too most beautiful. I prayed her to assist me, and her good sense was perfect. One could hope for no behavior like it from the young, thoughtless as they often are. But she gave me good provender and good red wine, a river bath, and finally this clothing. This is the bitter tale. These are the facts. But in reply, Alcinous observed, Friend, my child's good judgment failed in this, not to have brought you in her company home. Once you approached her, you became her charge. To this Odysseus tactfully replied, Sir, as to that, you should not blame the princess. She did tell me to follow her and her maids, but I would not. I felt abashed and feared the slight would somehow ruffle or offend you. All of us on this earth are plagued by jealousy. Alcinous answered with a declaration, Friend, I am not a man for a trivial anger. Better a sense of measure in everything. No anger here. I say that if it should please our father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, seeing the man you are, seeing your thoughts are my own thoughts, my daughter should be yours and you my son-in-law. if you remained here. A home, lands, riches you should have from me if you could be contented here. If not, by Father Juice, let none of our men hold you. On the contrary, I can assure you now of passage late tomorrow. While you sleep, my men will row you through the tranquil night to your own land and home, or where you please. It may not even be far from Euboea, called most remote by seamen of our isle, conveying where the son of Gaia put you. They put about with neither pause nor rest, and entered their home port the same sail day. But this you too will see, what ships I have, how my young oarsmen send the foaming a-scuttling. Now joy welled up in patient Lord Odysseus, who had devoutly in the warmest tones, O Father Zeus, let all this be fulfilled, as spoken by Alkinos. Earth of harvest, remember him, return me to my homeland. In this manner they conversed with one another, but the great lady called her maids and sent them to make a kingly bed, with purple rugs piled up and sheets outspread, and fleecy coverlets in the eastern colonnade. The girls went out with torches in their hands, swift at their work of bed making. Returning, they whispered at Lord Odysseus' shoulder, Sir, you may come. The bed has now been prepared. How welcome the word bed came to his ears. Now then, Odysseus laid him down and slept in luxury under the porch of morning, while in his inner chamber Alkinos retired to rest where his dear consort lay. We are at the end of book 7. Yep.
You can read as much as one. If you want to read, maybe, we can read through 5, 6 pages, whatever you want to do.
Under the opening fingers of the dawn, Alkinos, the sacred prince, arose, and then arose Odysseus, raider of cities. As the king willed, they went down by the shipways to the assembly ground of the Phaeacians. Side by side, the two men took their ease there on smooth stone benches. Meanwhile, Pallas Athena roamed through the byways of the town, contriving Odysseus's voyage home. In voice and feature, the crier of the king Alkinos, who stopped and passed the word to every man. Phaeacian lords and counselors, this way. Come to assembly, learn about the stranger. The new guest at the palace of Alkinos, a man the sea drove, but a comely man. The god's own light is on him. She roused them, and soon the assembly ground and seats were filled with curious men, a throng who peered and saw the mastermind of war, Laertes' son. Athena now poured out her grace upon him, head and shoulders, height and mass, a splendor awesome to the eyes of the How do you say that?
Say what?
How do you say that?
Which word?
Phaeacians? Phaeacians. Okay. She put him in a fettle to win the day, mastering every trial they set to test him. When all the crowd sat marshaled, quieted, Alkinos addressed the full assembly. Hear me, lords and captains of the... I already forgot it. Phaeacians.
Whatever you feel like saying.
I'll probably do that from now on. Hear what my heart would have me say. Our guest and new friend, nameless to me still, comes to my house after long wandering in dawn lands, or among the sunset races. Now he appeals to me for conveyance home. As in the past, therefore, let us provide passage, and quickly, for no guest of mine languishes here for lack of it. Look to it. Get a black ship afloat on the noble sea, and pick our fastest sailor, draft a crew of 52 from our younger townsmen, men who have made their names at sea. Loop oars well to your Thelepans, lads, then leave the ship. Come to our house, fall to, and take your supper. We'll furnish out a feast for every crewman. These are your orders. As for my older peers and princes of the realm, let them foregather in festival for our friend in my great hall, and let no man refuse. Call in our minstrel, Demedicos, whom God made Lord of Song, heart-easing, sing upon what theme he will. He turned, led the procession, and those princes followed, while his heralds sought the minstrel. Young oarsmen from the assembly chose a crew of 250, as the king commanded, and these filed off along the waterside to where the ship lay, poised above open water. They hauled the black hull down to ride the sea, rigging a mast and spar in the black ship, with oars at trail from corded rawhide, all seamanly, then tried the white sail, hoisting, and moored her off the beach. Then going ashore, the crew went up to the great house of Alkinos. Here the enclosures, entranceways, and rooms were filled with men, young men and old, for whom Alkinos had put 12 sheep to sacrifice, 8 tuskers, and a pair of shambling oxen. These now they flayed and dressed to make their banquet. The crier soon came, leading that man of song whom the muse cherished. By her gift he knew the good of life and evil, for she who lent him sweetness made him blind. Pontonos fixed a studded chair for him hard by a pillar amid the banqueters, hanging the taut harp from a peg above him, and guided up his hands upon the strings, placed a breadbasket at his side, and poured wine in a cup, that he might drink his fill. Now each man's hand went out upon the banquet. In time, when hunger and thirst were turned away, the muse brought the minstrel's mind a song of heroes whose great fame rang under heaven. The clash between Odysseus and Achilles, how one time they contended at the god feast raging, and the marshal, Agamemnon, felt inward joy over his captain's quarrel. For such had been foretold him by Apollo at Pytho, hallowed height, when the Achaean crossed the portal of rock to ask a sign. In the old days, when grim war lay ahead for Trojans and Danaans by God's will. So ran the tale, the minstrel sang. Odysseus, with massive hand, drew his rich mantle down over his brow, cloaking his face with it, to make the Phaeacians miss the secret tears that started to his eyes. How skillfully he dried them when the song came to a pause, threw back his mantle, spilt his gout of wine. But soon the minstrel plucked his note once more to please the Phaeacian lords, who loved the song. Then in his cloak Odysseus wept again. His tears flowed in the mantle unperceived. Only Alkinos, at his elbow, saw them, and caught the low groan in the man's breathing. At once he spoke to all the sea folk round him. Hear me, lords and captains of the Phaeacians. Our meat is shared, our hearts are full of pleasure, from the clear harp tone that accords with feasting. Now for the field and track, we shall have trials in the pentathlon. Let our guest go home and tell his friends what champions we are at boxing, wrestling, broad jump, and foot racing. On this he led the way, and all went after. The crier unslung and pegged the shining harp, and, taking Demodocus's hand, led him along with all the rest, Phaeacian peers, gay amateurs of the great games. They gained the common where a crowd was forming, and many a young athlete now came forward with seaside names like Tipmast, Titterace, Sparwood, Hullman, Sternman, Beecher, and Pullerman, Blue Water, Shearwater, Running Wake, Bordeley, Seabelt, son of Grand Fleet Shipwrightson, Sea Reach stepped up, son of the launching master, rugged as Ares, bane of men. His build excelled at all but Prince Laodamas, and Laodamas made entry with his brothers, Helios and Clytonius, son of the king. The runners first must have their quarter mile, all lined up tense, then go, and down the track. They raced the dust in a flying bunch, strung out longer and longer behind Prince Clytonius. By just so far as a mule team, breaking ground, with distance oxen, he left all behind and came up to the crowd, an easy winner. Then they made room for wrestling, grinding bouts that Sea Reach won, pinning the strongest men, then the broad jump. First place went to Seabelt. Sparwood gave the discus the mightiest fling, and Prince Laodamas outboxed them all. Now it was he, the son of Alkinos, who said when they had run through these diversions, "Look here, friends, we ought to ask the stranger if he competes in something. He's no cripple. Look at his leg muscles and his forearms. Neck like a bollard, strong as a bull he seems, and not old, though he may have gone stale under the rough times he had. Nothing like the sea for wearing out the toughest man alive." Then Sea Reach took him up at once and said, "Laodamas, you're right. By all the powers, go up to him yourself and put the question." At this, Alkinos' tall son advanced to the center ground and there addressed Odysseus. "Friend, Excellency, come to our competition. If you are practiced as you seem to be, while a man lives, he wins no greater honor than footwork and the skill of hands can bring him. Enter our games, then. Ease your heart of trouble. Your journey home is not far off. Remember, the ship is launched, the crew all primed for sea." Odysseus, canniest of men, replied, "Laodamas, why do you young chaps challenge me? I have more on my mind than track and field. Hard days, and many have I seen and suffered. I sit here at your field meet, yes, but only as one who begs your king to send me home." Now Sea Reach put in his word, and contentiously, "The reason being, as I see it, friend, you never learned a sport and have no skill in any of the contests of fighting men. You must have been the skipper of some tramp that crawled from one port to the next, jam full of chattering hands, a tallier of cargoes, itching for gold, not, by your looks, an athlete." Odysseus frowned and eyed him coldly, saying, "That was uncalled for, friend. You talk like a fool. The gods deal out no gift, this one or any, birth, brains, or speech, to every man alike. In looks, a man may be a shade, a specter, and yet be master of speech so crowned with beauty that people gaze at him with pleasure. Courteous, sure of himself, he can command assemblies, and when he comes to town, the crowds gather. A handsome man, contrariwise, may lack grace and good sense in everything he says. You now, for instance, with your fine physique, a god's indeed, you have an empty noodle. I find my heart inside my ribs aroused by your impertinence. I am no stranger to contests, as you fancy. I rated well when I could count on youth in my 2 hands. Now pain has cramped me, and my years of combat hacking through ranks in war and the bitter sea. Aye, even so I'll give your games a trial. You spoke heart-wounding words. You shall be answered."
He leapt out, cloaked as he was, and picked a discus, a rounded stone more ponderous than those already used by the Phaeacian throwers, and whirling, let it fly from his great hand with a low hum. The crowd went flat on the ground, all those oar-pulling, seafaring Phaeacians under the rushing noise. The spinning disc soared out, light as a bird, beyond all others. Disguised now as a Phaeacian, Athena staked it and called out, "Even a blind man, friend, could judge this, finding with his fingers one discus, quite alone, beyond the cluster. Congratulations, this event is yours. Not a man here can beat you or come near you." That was a cheering hail, Odysseus thought, seeing one friend there on the emulous field, and so in relief, he turned among the Phaeacians and said, "Now come alongside that one, lads. The next I'll send as far, I think, or farther. Anyone else on edge for competition, try me now. By heaven, you angered me. Racing, wrestling, boxing, I bar nothing with any man except Laodamas, for he's my host. Who quarrels with his host? Only a madman, or no man at all, would challenge his protector among strangers, cutting the ground away under his feet. Here are no others I will not engage, none but I hope to know what he is made of. Inept at combat, am I? Not entirely. Give me a smooth bow. I can handle it, and I might well be the first to hit my man amid a swarm of enemies, though archers in company around me drew together. Philoctetes alone at Troy, when we Achaeans took the bow, used to outshoot me. Of men who now eat bread upon the earth, I hold myself the best hand with a bow, conceding mastery to the men of old, Heracles or Eurytos of Oichalia, heroes who vied with gods in bowmanship. Eurytos came to grief, it's true. Old age never crept over him in his long haul. Apollo took his challenge ill and killed him. What then, the spear? I'll plant it like an arrow. Only in sprinting, I'm afraid, I may be passed by someone. Roll of the sea waves wearied me, and the victuals in my ship ran low. My legs are flabby. When he finished, the rest were silent, but Alkinos answered, Friend, we take your challenge in good part, for this man angered and affronted you here at our peaceful games. You'd have us note the prowess that is in you, and so clearly no man of sense would ever cry it down. Come, turn your mind now on a thing to tell among your peers when you are home again, dining in hall beside your wife and children. I mean our prowess as you may remember it. For we too have our skills given by Zeus and practiced from our father's time to this, not in the boxing ring nor the palestra conspicuous, but in racing, land or sea. And all our days we set great store by feasting, harpers, and the grace of dancing choirs, changes of dress, warm baths, and downy beds. O master dancers of the Phaeacians, perform now. Let our guest on his return tell his companions we excel the world in dance and song, as in our ships and running. Someone go find the Gittern harp in hall and bring it quickly to Demodocus. At the serene king's word, a squire ran to bring the polished harp out of the palace, and place was given to 9 referees, peers of the realm, masters of ceremony, who cleared a space and smoothed the dancing floor. The squire brought down and gave Demodocus the clear-toned harp, and centering on the minstrel, magical young dancers formed a circle with a light beat and stamp of feet. Beholding, Odysseus marveled at the flashing ring. Now to his harp the blinded minstrel sang of Ares' dalliance with Aphrodite, how hidden in Hephaestus' house they played at love together, and the gifts of Ares, dishonoring Hephaestus' bed, and how the word that wounds the heart came to the master from Helios who had seen the two embrace, and when he learned it, Lord Hephaestus went with baleful calculation to his forge. There mightily he armed his anvil block and hammered out a chain whose tempered links could not be sprung or bent. He meant that they should hold. Those shackles fashioned hot in wrath, Hephaestus climbed to the bower and the bed of love, pulled all his net of chain around the bedposts and swung it from the rafters overhead. Light as a cobweb, even gods in bliss could not perceive. So wonderful his cunning. Seeing his bed now made a snare, he feigned a journey to the trim stronghold of Lemnos, the dearest of earth's towns to him. And Ares? Ah, golden Ares' watch had its reward when he beheld the great smith leaving home. How promptly to the famous door he came, intent on pleasure with sweet Cytherea. She, who had left her father's side but now, sat in her chamber when her lover entered, and tenderly he pressed her hand and said, Come and lie down, my darling, and be happy. Hephaestus is no longer here, but gone to see his grunting Sintian friends on Lemnos. As she too thought repose would be most welcome, the pair went into bed, into a shower of clever chains, the netting of Hephaestus. So trussed they could not move apart nor rise. At last they knew there could be no escape. They were to see the glorious cripple now, for Helios had spied for him and told him. So he turned back this side of Lemnos Isle, sick at heart, making his way homeward. Now in the doorway of the room he stood, while deadly rage took hold of him. His voice, hoarse and terrible, reached all the gods. O Father Zeus, O gods in bliss forever, here is indecorous entertainment for you. Aphrodite, Zeus's daughter, caught in the act, cheating me, her cripple, with Ares, devastating Ares. Clean-limbed beauty is her joy, not these bandy legs I came into the world with. No one to blame but the 2 gods who bred me. Come see this pair entwining here in my own bed, how hot it makes me burn. I think they may not care to lie much longer, pressing on one another, passionate lovers. They'll have enough of bed together soon. And yet the chain that bagged them holds them down till father sends me back my wedding gifts, all that I poured out for his damned pigeon, so lovely and so wanton. All the others were crowding in now to the brazen house, Poseidon, who embraces earth, and Hermes the runner, and Apollo, lord of distance. The goddesses stayed home for shame, but these magnificences ranged there in the doorway, and irrepressible among them all arose the laughter of the happy gods. Gazing hard at Hephaestus' handiwork, the gods in turn remarked among themselves, "No dash in adultery now." The tortoise tags the hare, Hephaestus catches Ares, and Ares outran the wind. The lame god's craft has pinned him. Now shall he pay what is due from gods taken in cuckoldry. They made these improving remarks to one another, but Apollo leaned aside to say to Hermes, "Son of Zeus, beneficent wayfinder, would you accept a coverlet of chain if only you lay by Aphrodite's golden side?" To this the wayfinder replied, shining, "Would I not, though, Apollo of distances? Wrap me in chains 3 times the weight of these. Come goddesses and gods to see the fun. Only let me lie beside the pale golden one." The gods gave way again to peals of laughter, all but Poseidon, and he never smiled, but urged Hephaestus to unpinion Ares, saying emphatically in a loud voice, "Free him! You will be paid, I swear. Ask what you will. He pays up every jot the gods decree." To this the great game legs replied, "Poseidon, lord of the earth surrounding sea, I should not swear to a scoundrel's honor. What have I as surety from you if Ares leave me empty-handed with my empty chain?" The earth shaker for answer urged again, "Hephaestus, let us grant he goes and leaves the fine unpaid. I swear then, I shall pay it." Then said the great game legs at last, "No more, you offer terms I cannot well refuse." And down the strong god bent to set them free, till disencumbered of their bond, the chain, the lovers leapt away, he into Thrace, while Aphrodite, laughter's darling, fled to Cyprus Isle and Paphos, to her meadow and altar dim with incense. There the Graces bathed and anointed her with golden oil, a bloom that clings upon immortal flesh alone, and let her folds of mantle fall in glory. So ran the song the minstrel sang.
Odysseus, listening, found sweet pleasure in the tale among the Phaeacian mariners and oarsmen. And next Alcinous called upon his sons, Helios and Laodamas, to show the dance no one could do as well as they, handling a purple ball carven by Pelopius. One made it shoot up under the shadowing clouds as he leaned backward, bounding high in air. The other cut its flight far off the ground, and neither missed a step as the ball soared. The next turn was to keep it low, and shuttling hard between them, while the ring of boys gave them a steady stamping beat. Odysseus now addressed Alcinous. "O Majesty, model of all your folk, your promise was to show me peerless dancers. Here is the promise kept. I am all wonder." At this, Alcinous, in his might rejoicing, said to the seafarers of Phaeacia, "Attend me now, Phaeacian lords and captains. Our guest appears a clear-eyed man and wise. Come, let him feel our bounty as he should. Here are 12 princes of the kingdom, lords paramount, and I who make 13. Let each one bring a laundered cloak and tunic, and add 1 bar of honorable gold. Heap all your gifts together, load his arms, let him go joyous to our evening feast. As for Sea Reach, why, man to man he'll make amends, and handsomely he blundered." Now all as one claimed the king's good pleasure, and each one sent a squire to bring his gifts. Meanwhile Sea Reach found speech again, saying, "My lord and model of us all, Alcinous, as you require of me in satisfaction, this broadsword of clear bronze goes to our guest. Its hilt is silver, in the ringed sheath of new-sawn ivory, a costly weapon." He turned to give the broadsword to Odysseus, facing him, saying blithely, "Sir, my best wishes, my respects. If I offended, I hope the sea winds blow it out of mind. God send you see your lady in your homeland soon again, after the pain of exile." Odysseus, the great tactician, answered, "My hand, friend, may the gods award you fortune. I hope no pressing need comes on you ever for this fine blade you give me in amends." He slung it, glinting silver, from his shoulder, as the light shone from sundown. Messengers were bearing gifts and treasure to the palace, where the king's sons received them all and made a glittering pile at their grave mother's side. Then, as Alcinous took his throne of power, each went to his own high-backed chair in turn, and said Alcinous to Arete, "Lady, bring here a chest, the finest one, a clean cloak and tunic. Stow these things and warm a cauldron for him. Let him bathe when he has seen the gifts of the Phaeacians, and so dine happily to a running song. My own wine cup of gold intaglio I'll give him too. Through all the days to come, tipping his wine to Zeus or other gods in his great hall, he shall remember me." Then said Arete to her maids, "The tripod, stand the great tripod laid about the fire." They strung the cauldron on the fire's heart, poured water in, and fed the blaze beneath until the basin shimmered, cupped in flame. The queen set out a rich chest from her chamber and folded in the gifts, clothing and gold given Odysseus by the Phaeacians. Then she put in the royal cloak and tunic, briskly saying to her guest, "Now here, sir, look to the lid yourself and tie it down against light fingers, if there be any, on the black ship tonight while you are sleeping." Noble Odysseus, expert in adversity, battened the lid down with a lightning knot, learned once long ago from the Lady Kirke, and soon a call came from the bathing mistress, who led him to a hip bath, warm and clear, a happy sight and rare in his immersions after he left Calypso's home, where surely the luxuries of a god were ever his. When the bath maids had washed him, rubbed him down, put a fresh tunic and a cloak around him, he left the bathing place to join the men at wine in the hall. The Princess Naiska, an exquisite figure, as of heaven's shaping, waited beside a pillar as he passed, and said swiftly, with wonder in her look, "Farewell, stranger, in your land remember me, who met and saved you. It is worth your thought." The man of all occasions now met this, "Daughter of great Alcinous, Naiska, makes Zeus the Lord of Thunder, Hera's consort, grant me daybreak again in my own country. But there in all my days until I die, may I invoke you as I would a goddess, princess, to whom I owe my life." He left her and went to take his place beside the king. Now when the roasts were cut, the wine bowls full, a herald led the minstrel down the room amid the deference of the crowd, and paused to seat him near a pillar in the center. Whereupon that resourceful man, Odysseus, carved out a quarter from his chine of pork, crisp with fat, and called the blind man's guide. "Herald, take this to Demodocus. Let him feast and be merry with my compliments. All men owe honor to the poets, honor in all, for they are dearest to the muse who puts upon their lips the rays of life." Gentle Demodocus took the proffered gift and inwardly rejoiced. When all were served, every man's hand went out upon the banquet, repelling hunger and thirst, until at length Odysseus spoke again to the blind minstrel. "Demodocus, accept my utmost praise. The muse, daughter of Zeus in radiance, or else Apollo gave you skill to shape, with such great style, your songs of Achaeans. Their hard lot, how they thought and suffered war. You shared it, one would say, or heard it all. Now shift your theme, and sing that wooden horse Epios built, inspired by Athena. The ambuscade Odysseus filled with fighters and sent to take the inner town of Troy. Sing only this for me, sing me this well, and I shall say at once before the Lord, the grace of heaven has given us a song." The minstrel stirred, murmuring to the god, and soon clear words and notes came one by one, a vision of the Achaeans in their graceful ships, drawing away from shore, the torches flung and shelters flaring, Argive soldiers crouched in the close dock around Odysseus, and the horse tall on the assembly ground of Troy. For when the Trojans poured it in themselves up to the citadel, they sat nearby with long drawn out and hapless argument, favoring, in the end, one course of three, either to stave the fault with brazen axes, or haul it to a cliff and pitch it down, or else to save it for the gods, a fold of glory. The plan that could not but prevail. For Troy must perish, as ordained. That day she harbored the great horse of timber. Hidden the flower of Achaea lay, and bore slaughter and death upon the men of Troy. He sang then of a town sacked by Achaeans, pouring down from the horse's hollow cave, this way and that raping the steep city, and how Odysseus came like Ares to the door of Deiphobos with Menelaus, and braved the desperate fight there, conquering once more by Athena's power. The splendid minstrel sang it, and Odysseus let the bright molten tears run down his cheeks, weeping the way a wife mourns for her lord on the lost field where he has gone down fighting, the day of wrath that came upon his children. At sight of a man panting and dying there, she slips down to enfold him, crying out, then feels the spears prodding her back and shoulders, and goes bound into slavery and grief. Piteous weeping wears away her cheeks, but no more piteous than Odysseus's tears, cloaked as they were now from the company. Only Alcinous at his elbow knew, hearing the low sob in the man's breathing, and when he knew, he spoke. Hear me, lords and captains of Phaeacia, and let Demodocus touch his harp no more. His theme has not been pleasing to all here. During the feast, since our fine poet sang, our guest has never left off weeping. Grief seems fixed upon his heart. Break off the song. Let everyone be easy, host and guest. There's more decorum in the smiling banquet. We have prepared here, on our friend's behalf, safe conduct in a ship, and gifts to cheer him, holding that any man with a grain of wit would treat a decent suppliant like a brother. Now by the same rule, friend, you must not be secretive any longer. Come, in fairness, tell me the name you bore in that far country. How were you known to family and neighbors? No man is nameless, no man good or bad, but gets a name in his first infancy, none being born unless a mother bears him. Tell me your native land, your coast and city, sailing directions for the ships, you know, for those Phaeacian ships of ours that have no steersman and no steering oar, defining the crew's wishes as they do, and knowing, as they do, the ports of call about for ward. Hidden in mist or cloud, they scud the open sea, with never a thought of being in distress or going down. There is, however, something I once heard Mnestheus, my father, say. Poseidon holds it against us that our deep sea ships are sole conveyance for our passengers. My father said, some day one of our cutters, homeward bound over the cloudy sea, would be wrecked by the god, in a range of hills thrown round our city. So, in his age, he said, and let it be or not as the god please. But come now, put it for me clearly. Tell me the sea ways that you wandered, and the shores you touched, the cities and the men therein, uncivilized, if sets there were, and hostile, and those God-fearing who had kindly manners. Tell me why you should grieve so terribly over the Argives and the fall of Troy. That was all God's work, leaving ruin there, so it should make a song for men to come. Some kin of yours, then, died at Ilion, some first great man by marriage near to you, next your own blood most dear, or some companion of congenial mind and fowler. True it is, a wise friend can take a brother's place in our affection.
Now this was the reply Odysseus made. Alcinous, king in admiration of men, how beautiful this is to hear a minstrel gifted as yours. A god he might be, singing. There's no boon in life more sweet, I say, than when a summer joy holds all the room, and banqueters sit listening to a harper in a great hall, by rows of tables sheeped with bread and roast meat, while a steward goes to dip up wine and brim your cups again. Here is the flower of life, it seems to me. But now you wish to know my cause for sorrow, and therefore give me cause for more. What shall I say first? What shall I keep until the end? The gods have tried me in 1,000 ways. By first my name, let me be known to you, and if I pull away from pitiless death, friendship will bind us, though my land lies far. I am Lartus, son of Odysseus. Men hold me formidable for guile and peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. My home is on the peak sea marked of Ithaca, Mount Ithaca under Mount Neon's wind-blown robe of leaves, in sight of other islands, Dulichion, same wounded Psychenos, Ithaca being most lofty in that coastal sea and northwest, while the rest lie east and south. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see on earth a place more dear, though I have seen detained long by Calypso, loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart's delight, as Kirk of Aia, the enchantress, desired me and detailed me in her hall. But in my heart I've never gave consent. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. What of my sailing then from Troy? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? The wind that carried west from Ilion brought me to Ismaros on the far shore, a strong point on the coast of the Kikones. I stormed that place and killed the men who fought. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women to make division equal shares to all. But on the spot I told them, back and quickly, out to sea again. My men were mutinous fools on stores of wine. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf, and shambling cattle feasting, while fugitives went inland running to call the arms the men force of Kikones. This was an army trained to fight on horseback or where the ground required on foot. They came with dawn over the terrain like the slaves and blades of spring. So doom appeared to us, dark word of Zeus for us, our evil days. My men stood up and made a fight of it. Back on the ships, with lances kept in play, from bright morning through the blaze of noon, holding our beach, although so far outnumbered. But when the sun passed toward unyoking time, then the Achaeans one by one gave way. 6 benches were left empty in every ship that evening when we pulled away from death. In this new grief we were bore with us to see our precious lives we had, but not our friends. No ship made sail next day until some shipmate had raised a cry 3 times for each poor ghost unfleshed by the Kikones on that field. Now Zeus, the lord of cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, and driving veils of squall moved down like night on the land and sea. The bows went plunging against the gust, sails cracked and lashed out strips in the big wind. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled the nearest lee. The 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief, until a third dawn came with ringlets shining. Then we put up our masts, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it home safely that time, but as I came round Melia, the current took me out to sea, and from the north and fresh gale drove me on past Kythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds. Upon the 10th we came the coastline of the lotus eaters who live upon the flower. We landed there to take on water. All ships' companies mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I sent out 2 picked men and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with lotus eaters who sailed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate this unnamed plant, the lotus, never cared to report nor to return. They longed to stay forever, browsing on the native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. I drove them all 3 willing to the ships, tied them down under the rowing benches, and called the rest. All hands aboard. Come, clear the bench, and no one tastes the lotus, or you lose your hope of home. Filling in their places by the rowlocks, my oarmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved out again on our seafaring. In the next land we found were Cyclopes, giants, louts without a law to bless them. In ignorance, leaving the fruitage of the earth and mystery to the immortal gods, they neither plow nor sow by hand, nor to the ground, though grain, wild wheat, and barley grows untended, and wine grapes in clusters ripen in heaven's earth. Cyclopes have no muster and no meeting, no consolation or old tribal ways, but each one dwells in his own mountain cave, dealing out rough justice to wife and child, indifferent to what others do. Well then, across the wide bay from the mainland, there lies a desert island not far out, but still close inshore. Wild goats in hundreds breed there, and no human being comes upon the isle to startle them. No hunter of all who ever tracked with hounds through forests or had rough going over mile trails. The island planted and untilled, a wilderness pasture goes alone, and this is why good ships like ours with cheek paint at the bows are far beyond the key clopes. No shipwright tolls among them, shaping and building up symmetrical trim hulls to cross the sea and visit all the seaboard towns, as men do go who and come in commerce over water. This isle, sea-going folk who have annexed it and built their homesteads on it, all good land, fertile for every crop and season, lush, well-watered meads along the store, vines in profusion prairie, clear for the plow, where grain and grow chin high by harvest time, and rich subsoil. The island cove is landlocked, so you need to know housers and astern, bowstones are mooring. Run and ride there till the day your crews chafe to be under sail, and a far wind blows. You'll find a good water flowing from a cavern through dusky poplars into the upper bay. Here we made harbor. Some good guided us that night, for we could barely see our bows, and the dense fog around us, and no moonlight filtered through the overcast. No lookout, nobody saw the island dead ahead, nor even the great landward rolling below that took us in. We found ourselves in shallows, keels grazing shore, so furled our sails and dismarked where the low ripples broke. There on the beach we lay and slept till morning. Anyone else want to read? I am on line like 162 or 3 when dawn spreads. I think so. Yeah, book 9.
Right at the end of book 9, because the little readers.
I don't think so. Am I- Right here. Yeah.
Grief, that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is dawn. It's going to be so. Dawn spread out her fingertips above as we turned our mark to the toward the aisle. Okay, I'm just looking for. No, see any reference to dawn. That's what I'm looking for. Should be a new paragraph. Okay. And if we have different
editions.
Well, different lineation because this is early.
Okay.
9. Beside sun. Wait. Cyclops. It looks like it's at the beginning of the Cyclops section. Though, so.
Okay.
I think maybe. And this beginning right there, so I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere
Around
here. Yeah. Okay. We're changing up translations from Fitzgerald all the way back to George Chapman. So. Right. So it's going to be different. Yeah, it's and it might. I don't know if it has to do with delineation, but book 9. And you just finished around line 1. 6. Right here we're done.
So they're going to Cyclops, right?
Right, it's near the beginning of the Cyclops episode.
Okay. I think it's right there. Because that's that.
Yeah,
and saying something about, why don't you start there? I know
Okay.
That looks good.
Okay. Right, this is George Chapman's translation. I'm going to try to read it in original pronunciation. 1610. The land of Cyclops first, a savage kind, nor tamed by manners, nor by laws confined. Untaught to plant, to turn the glebe and sow, they all live products to free nature. They are the products to the soil untilled, a ready harvest yields. With wheat and barley wave the golden fields. Spontaneous wines from weighty clusters pour, and Jove descends in each prolific shower. By these no statutes and no rates are known, nor council held, nor monarch fills the throne. But high on hills or airy cliffs they dwell, or deep in caves whose entrance leads to hell. Each rose's race, the knight were not his car, heedless of others to his own severe. Opposed to the Cyclopean coast there lie an isle, whose hills their subject fields survey. Its name's Lachaia, crowned with many a grove, where savage goats through pathless thickets rove. No needy mortals here with hunger bowled, or wretched hunters through the wintry cold pursue their flight, but leave them safe to bound from hill to hill or all the desert ground. Nor knaws the soil to feed the fleecy car, or feels the labours of the crooked share, but unhabited, untilled, unsown, it lies, and breeds the bleating goat alone. For there no vessel with vermilion prow, or bark or traffic glides from shore to shore. The rugged race of savages unskilled, the seas to traverse or the ships to build, gaze on the coast, nor cultivate the soil, unlearned in all the industrious arts of toil. Yet here all products and all plants abound, sprung from the fruitful genius of the ground. Fields waving high, with heavy crops are seen, and vines that flourish in eternal grain. Refreshing meads among the murmuring mine, and fountains streaming down the fruitful plain. A port there is, enclosed on either side, where ships may rest, unanchored and untied, till the glad mariners incline to sail, and the sea whitens with the rising gale. High at the head, from out the caverned rock, in living rills a gushing fountain broke. Around it and above, forever green, the busy alders formed a shady scene. Hither some favouring god, beyond our thought, through all surrounding shade or navy brought. For gloomy night descended on the plain, nor glimmered Phoebe in the ethereal plain. But all unseen the clouded island lay, and all unseen the surging rolling sea, till safe we anchored in the sheltered bay. Our sails we gathered, cast our cables o'er, and slept secure among the sandy shore. Soon as again the rosy morning shone revealed the landscape in the scene unknown. With wonder seas we view the blazing ground, and walk delighted in the spetiate around. Roused by the woodland nymphs at early dawn, the mountain goats come bounding o'er the lawn, and haste to follow to the ship's repair, for arms and weapons of the sylvan ware. Striked in 3 squadrons, all our crew we part, and bend the bow or wing the muzzle dart. The bounteous gods afford a copious prey, and 9 fat goats each vessel bears away. The royal bark had 10, our ships complete. We thus supplied, for 12 were all the fleet. Here till the setting sun rolled down the light, we sat indulging in the genial rite. Nor wines were wanting. From those from ample jars we drained the price of our Siconian wars. The land of Cyclops lie in prospect near, the voice of goats and bleating flocks we hear, and from the mountains rising smokes appear. Now sunk the sun and darkness covered o'er the face of things. Along the sea-bait shore, satiate we slept, but when the sacred dawn rising glittered over the dewy lawn, I called my fellows and these words addressed. My dear associates, here's indulge your rest, while with my single ship adventurous, I go forth the manners of young men to try, whether a race unjust of barbarous might, rude and unconscious of a stranger's right, or such who harbor pity in their breast, revere the gods and succor the distressed. This side I claimed my vessel's lofty side, my train obeyed me, and the ship untied. In order sated on the banks, they sweep Neptune's smooth face and clave the yielding deep. When to the nearest verge of land we drew,